Thank you everybody for joining us for the July 30th meeting of the Charter Revision Commission. We'll call the meeting to order at 6:08 this evening. Do a quick roll call in person. Carl Dickens, Tyler Fairbairn, and John Levin. Online, I see Doug Hempstead, Tanya Rhodes Small, and Ed Camacho's name is on there.
Yep, he's on there.
Ed's there. Attorney Steve Mendick is here with us. We will open the meeting with our public participation portion. We will do same thing we did last night. We'll alternate between in person and if there's anybody on Zoom. Do we have anybody signed up in person? We do not. Is anybody here who has not signed up interested in public participation? If not, we will go to the.
Do you just want us to weigh in as you're going through items if we have?
Yeah, I think that's be a part of the program this evening, is that our invited guests here, we'd like to have a conversation with you rather than just have you come up in 3 minutes to the podium. We do have one attendee on Zoom. Mr. Pennington, if you were interested in speaking, could you raise your Zoom hand so that we can activate? If you're just watching, that's also fine. Okay. So we will then move into the discussion of the, kind of pick up where we left off last night, which is the 21 recommendations from the Common Council to the Charter Revision Commission that we're going to try to consider as many of these as we can, given the limited time we have. So we will start with items 1 and 2. I believe those can be combined. They are related to each other. Both of these items were passed with unanimous consent when the council deliberated on them. It's changed to Article 2, Section 2-2B10, changing the name of the Common Council to the City Council. Related to that is Article 2, Chapter 22C3, which would essentially indicate that changing the name from the Common Council to the City Council has no impact on the decisions that the body's making and so forth. So, is there a motion to approve those two items together?
I will move.
John will make a motion. Do we have any discussion? I don't know if there's much discussion to have on that topic.
The only question I have for clarity's sakes, should it say Norwalk Council?
I don't.
Does it?
Yeah, I don't know that it needs to, Doug, because I don't know that it was Norwalk Common Council. I think we're just changing Common Council to City Council. I think the Norwalk is implied. Okay, all in favor of approving items 1 and 2 together?
All right.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Passes unanimously. Okay. Yeah, well, 3, it was 3, 5, and 6, right? Were the related council size issues. So, and this will also, item 6 also incorporates the minority party discussion. So,
yeah, 3 and 5. By acting there, you either act to keep what you proposed or make or for the status quo, and then 6 would change the status.
6 would change.
Yeah.
Right. So, items 3 and 5. Well,
We can adopt items 3 and 5 and then adopt item 6.
I think you need to discuss 6 first, right?
yeah, I mean, 5 and 6 could also be related as well, though. I mean, you could do, right, because you're retaining 2 council members per district while also adding to the at-large.
Right. Right.
Yeah, well, I just thought that, yeah, I see your point.
Right. So, well, let's do 3 first. Right. This would retain 15 council members. It would essentially negate 6, right? If you're voting to keep 3, you're voting to vote, you're also voting no on 6, which would add the 2,
No, I don't think that's the way.
no?
No, if you're voting yes on 3, you're voting to maintain the status quo at this moment. It basically you're voting to retain the current stand. That's why the 3 and 5 went together, because it retains the current system of the council has rejected the move to 20 and the move to 3 in the districts. So that's what the council did. And so by voting in favor of 3 and 5, then you're starting off with a baseline of 2 members per district and 15-member council. Then you start discussing
Okay,
the change.
Yes,
That's why-
Steve's right.
okay, we'll do it that way then. So we will combine 3 and 5. Is there a motion to approve 3 and 5, which would keep the current 15 council members, and it would retain the 2 council members per district as opposed to the 3 that was recommended by the Charter Commission?
I'll make that motion.
Is there any discussion on this? Okay, all in favor of retaining the current standard of 15 council members with 2 per district? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any noes? Any abstentions? Okay. Let's do 4 so that we can finish off this page. Steve, this was reviewing with the council during the conferral phase. I mean, this is, I don't understand what.
So the issue here, unless the majority leader wants to speak.
Okay, if you don't mind. I think I said this at the end of the meeting last night, but just to reiterate so that it's there for the record, the council, and I'm speaking for the council at this point, and Jalen, and I think Nora and Nicole Edie are here as well, in case I'm wrong. But the council is in support of 4-year terms for the mayor, town clerk, and council. There is a consensus on that. The part where there is not a consensus, and something that was brought up last night and something that's going to need to be discussed during the deliberations phase, obviously, which we're in right now, is the suggestion or the draft submitted by the Charter Revision Commission, which had the mayor's 4-year term start as of the 2029 municipal election and the councils start at 2031, i.e. does the council run with the mayor or does the council run opposite the mayor? That's where there is not a consensus. And that's why this is worded the way this is, because that point, there is not a consensus.
So just from a procedural point of view, if I may,
Please.
if you want to support the notion of the proposal that was made in the draft, i.e. separating the 2 so that the 4-year cycles can commence 2 years apart, mayors would commence on 29 and the town clerk on the 29 cycle, and the council in the 31 cycle, you would be voting, I think we have to do a motion to basically send in our final report that item, the way it is.
Yeah.
And what that does is, if you don't want to, and we're not quite sure where the council consensus is, I think that's an issue that will be debated at the council. The way to preserve a debate at the council is simply to send back the document the way you sent it to them.
Yeah.
Because they can reject it, and if they reject it, it then unifies the 2. You see my point? Because the current charter has a unified election cycle, so that if they reject the split cycle, then it would unify it, presumably you'd have to choose the cycle that it starts in 29, I guess is where it would be. And that preserves an opportunity for the council to debate the issue.
Yeah.
I think what Attorney Mendick just said is amenable to us.
Is what?
Amenable. Yes.
May I ask a question of Josh?
Sure.
Yeah, hi, Josh. So Josh, what was the feeling or the argument against the notion that by splitting the elections, that you, number one, act as a a check against each other, the mayor and the common council. And you also optimize voter turnout in each, every 2 years, because the Board of Ed is in the mix, and constables and everything else. And if the only time that the residents get to vote for mayor and common council is at the same time every 4 years, those off-year elections are going to be very poorly attended. What was was there no concern about that, or was that considered to be?
There is a concern about that. That concern, I think, exists regardless of whether the council runs off cycle with the mayor or on cycle with the mayor, because the likelihood of whether there's an election where it's common council members and Board of Education members, or just Board of Education members, the likelihood is going to be that those off-year elections are going to be very low turnout elections. And so the question is, could it provide a situation where there's such low turnout that it doesn't actually represent, it produces to put it funky results, and results that aren't representative of what the community at large thinks, because unfortunately, a reality that we just know and we would like to change, but we know, is that turnout in municipal elections, when the mayor's on the ballot, is very low, and is far lower when the mayor isn't on the ballot. So that's a concern that was raised by more than one council member, but there were members that thought there was valid reasoning behind what your argument was. It's just not, what I'm saying is, that is not a settled issue among council members. And I wanted to fairly represent what the split was with our members as we're in this particular phase of the charter revision process.
Okay,
I
thank
would
you.
I would like to ask a question as well. The Board of Ed currently serves 4-year terms, but they have a staggered election cycle themselves. So for one municipal election cycle, there's at-large Board of Ed members elected, and for the other 2-year election cycle, 2 years following, it's the in-district Board of Ed members. Is it possible to use that same type of structure for the soon to be named city council, for the election of city council members, so that some are elected at the same cycle as the mayor and others are in the opposing 2 years?
I think that's an idea worthy of consideration. I don't, we'd have to see what the proposal is and talk about it a little more in detail, but in abstract, that's not something that I'm opposed to right out the gate. I don't know what the council as a whole position on that kind of a proposal is. That's not something that we really discussed. But I think it's an idea worthy of further discussion, and I appreciate that you brought it up.
I'm a little bit worried about process then. We're late in the game for lots of discussion. For this process, do we actually make a firm recommendation? So it's one way or another way, not a menu selection
Yeah,
process.
we're at a point where we can't really come up with a new novel concept. So as I suggested, if the council is unresolved, the best way to lead toward a resolution is to basically reassert your current position.
Send it back as
Send it
is,
back
let the
as
council
is.
debate it.
And let them debate it on the floor, and they'll either divide it or they'll go with divide it as either accept it or reject it. If they reject it, then they're on a unified schedule. And it means that one group of Board of Education members are all by themselves in off cycle.
Yeah.
Well,
Which would be even
just-
lower
It'll
turnout.
be
Yeah.
very, yes.
So,
So
so it's too late to start raising new ideas like that.
what is it though? Is it really? I mean, that is
You kind of.
really
It is.
responsive to the trying to figure out when these cycles begin, and we're simply assigning a start point for city council members.
Well, we've made a recommendation,
Right,
right? With the commission has made a recommendation that starting in 31, it's 4-year cycles, right? So what we can do is send this back to the council. And they can say, we like that, or reject it and come up with their own solution. Right? I mean, but we can't, I mean, we have tonight and as much of August 5th as possible to get through a lot of this stuff. So I don't know that we have time to come up with a new way to do this and properly discuss it and debate it and consider the council's opinions on it.
okay,
So I think we just need to, my recommendation would be just send it back as is.
Can you make a motion of that?
well, before we do, I just want to add, you point out that there will be a problem created because the Board of Ed election members will be hanging out there by themselves for a municipal election cycle where no other municipal offices are being elected. Am I getting that right?
Yeah,
And that harms turnout. Why not sync the in-district council elections with the in-district Board of Ed elections and the at-large council elections with the at-large Board of Ed elections?
I mean, is that something we can do now, or is that something we
It's
just send
something you
back to
should
the council?
propose before it came, I mean, the proposal you have before the council is what you have.
Right.
It's split.
Yeah.
You did not recommend that to the commission when the commission sent their draft report in. It is too late to raise it at this point. That was not an issue that was before the council. The council's come back with their recommendation to look at this, and the universe is basically the two alternatives. And to start going into another alternative, it's very late in the day for that to.
But
And you can't give them look, we're giving them a choice. By taking a position, we're giving them a choice.
Right.
By retaining the position of the draft report, the council has a choice between two items. And that's fine. You can't give them a third item to look at. You can't say there's 3 different choices, pick your item on the menu for what you want to do. We're
Yeah,
beyond that point in this
right,
process.
I understand that. I'm just wondering, is the council only allowed to respond to what the Charter Revision Commission presents to them?
Yes, I've
Um,
explained that how many
okay.
times?
Many,
Commissioner.
many
times.
I'm just
That-
reconfirming.
Let me just point out for the record, when we send something back to the council, reason that it's important to have this dialogue and to keep the dialogue going throughout this process is they can't amend anything. They have to go up or down. So there's no nuance that we can leave and have them expect that they're going to change it because they can't change it in this process. Here they have the unusual situation. It's not unusual. They have a situation where if they reject our proposal, then there's a different answer. The answer is a consolidated election. You can't add a third element.
Okay, understood. This is regrettable then. I wish this had been considered earlier, and maybe it'll be work for the next Charter Revision Commission in 2030.
Perhaps it will. So I will make a motion that we on item 4. Leave it unchanged and send it back to the council as we did.
Doug has his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Doug.
That's right. Difference of opinion. And I'm just putting this on the record. It's already known. I'm not in favor of 4-year term. Having said that, if the goal and my understanding is all the feedback was to get more participation by the public in elections. In my 26 years of being elected, but 30 some odd years being involved with elections, that I would suggest if the council wants to look at something, just put everybody in for the same 4 years. Make the constables 4 years, make both sides of the Board of Ed 4 years, and it's all concurrent with the mayor. Because you go to an off-year election, trust me, you got trouble. There's more people that showed up elections 25 years ago when the town had less people and less registered voters than they do now, percentage-wise. So I think that encourages people to come out at least, otherwise you go to an off year where you just got either districts or at-large seats, nobody's gonna show up. I shouldn't say nobody. I think participation will be off. That's my humble opinion, and there you go.
No, you're right.
Well, I mean, then are we voting no on our suggestion? I mean, is that what that vote is? And then it goes back to them and stays as it is without the split starting in 31?
The only debate would be the 4-year term.
So we would then, Doug, to do that, I mean, we're not changing any of the other positions, but if we want to leave it coterminous, we would be voting no on our initial recommendation. So we would need a motion to vote no on 4. Other than the 4-year terms. Or would we have to amend 4?
What you have to do is there'd be a motion for a 4-year term with a common election date. You'd have to decide, does it take place in 2029 or 2031? So it would be modification of your proposal. Right.
I think I'm sorry, Steve, just to follow up with that, I guess what I meant too is that when you do it, it's all the same year. There's no sense staggering anybody.
Yeah,
Whatever is the
that's
change.
right. If we didn't want the split, Doug, then we would
It has to be the same year.
we would be making the decision.
Okay.
We have the 4-year mayor, clerk, and council elections start in 29 or 31. I mean, we had proposed 29 for mayor and clerk. And we proposed 31 for the split council. If you're doing the 4-year council along with the mayor and the clerk, it would probably make sense just to do it all in 29.
May I make a motion that we leave it as is? Because we're gonna run into that voter turnout problem, and I don't think that's been thought through well. So I would move that we leave it as is, and it's either gonna be accepted or rejected by the common
Your
council.
original motion. What was your motion?
The original motion was just to vote no and leave it as is.
Well, there's no yes or no, because the way they did it was take a look at
Please take it.
So your motion is to leave it as is, which is what Commissioner
Tyler?
Blanchard just did.
Councilmember Nagelska Eichner wanted to make a comment, if it's all right with you.
Just very
Yes, no, I'm
briefly. Sorry, no, just very briefly, I want to, I think, I am only speaking for myself. I cannot speak for the rest of the council, but I am worried about the point that is being made here that if we do not do the stagger, then we have 4 Board of Ed seats that just float out in the middle of every 2 years. Or in the middle, with nothing else. And I also thought that part of the logic of this body's recommendation for the stagger was the sense that it might help ease public support for the 4-year term because it would provide the opportunity for sort of a mid-year check. And I don't want that argument to fall out. So I personally lean towards this body's original proposal. Again, I speak only for myself, but I just want to make sure that part of the question didn't fall out of this conversation.
Do we have a motion to send it back with the original proposal?
I'll make that motion.
Carl will make that. All in favor?
Just before we vote, just want to confirm, the original proposal was to have 4-year term commence for the mayor in 29 and 4-year term for the council commence in 31.
Correct.
Okay.
And the clerk is 29. as
The
well.
clerk is 29 as well.
Okay.
Okay.
All in favor of Carl's motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Doug is opposed. Any abstentions? I'm sorry, Tanya, were you a yes vote?
Yeah, I was a yes.
Okay, so it's 5-1
So retain.
to retain. Okay, so now we're to 6. This is Article 3, Section 34A2, at-large council members. The proposal from the council was to add 2 at-large seats with 2 additional members who would be not from the majority party, would expand the size of the council to 17 members. And this would be effective in the 2029 municipal election. Is there a motion to approve that recommendation?
I move to make this further out in the agenda when we'll have more commissioners present at this meeting.
Is anyone else coming?
Joe Bennett will.
Okay. So your vote is to table this until Joe is here. Your motion, you were making a motion to table this item until Joe is here.
This evening, yes.
Okay. We've all in favor of tabling the motion until later this evening, or tabling this item until later.
When is that gonna happen?
When Joe is here.
Well, when is that?
Do we know? Do you know?
I don't know.
You don't know.
She did send an email just
She
before the
said-
meeting
She
started.
said if she can get on, so it's not a definite that she'll be able to make it on.
It's not that. Okay, well, we will, all in favor of tabling it? Opposed?
No,
No.
Any abstentions? Okay, I mean,
Roll.
who's,
Make it a roll call.
Yeah,
That would be
roll call
smart.
vote. Okay,
Someone's not paying
yeah,
attention.
okay. The vote in favor of tabling item 6. John Levin. Is a
Yes.
yes. Tyler Fairbairn is a no. Carl Dickens
no,
is a no. Tanya Rhodes Small
No,
is a no. Ed Camacho,
No.
Doug Hempstead,
No,
that's everybody. So we are going to discuss this item. If we do not know that Joe is coming or not, so we'll discuss item 6.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
can I make a motion to put this to the end of the agenda?
That's kind of what we just voted on. but-
No, tabling it means you need a vote to take it back off the table. I'm just making a motion to move it to the end of the agenda, if that's okay.
Okay.
To move it to the end of the agenda.
didn't we already?
It's on the agenda for tonight.
Table, it's a
Right.
different motion.
Yeah, we can do that, Doug. I mean, I mean, to be clear about what we're gonna do tonight, I don't know that we're gonna get through the whole list tonight,
That's the problem.
right? So if we put this as item 21, I don't know that we're gonna get that.
I think it-
Got it.
Okay.
Okay, I'll withdraw my motion. Let's deal with it.
We voted
We
to
got a
not table.
Once we have a quorum.
Let's deal with it.
because-
Yeah, okay, I'm sorry.
Let's deal with it.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the item 6 suggestion from the council, we add 2 at-large council seats who would not be from the majority party?
So
Just point of information, the way the proposal is actually made, there may not necessarily be a majority party elected to at-large council seats. So there, it just simply caps the number of nominees that a party can make for at-large seats at, I believe, 5. Am I getting this correct?
I mean, I think the
Yes.
concept is right. I don't know that that's how it's written for us.
I've got some proposed language that would address the issue, which, and there's a slight iteration, in the way to do it. Let me read you the language. Effective with the municipal general election of 2029, so this will take effect in 2029. There shall be 7 council members at large elected from the city. The electors shall vote for no more, this is one variable, I'll talk about in a minute, then 5 of the at-large candidates for the council. Each major or minor party is defined in the general statutes, and petitioning slates of candidates, if permitted by the general statutes, may nominate up to 5 candidates for the members at large, and those 7 candidates receiving the highest number of votes shall be elected. I'll explain the other iteration would be you get to vote for all 7. A lot of communities adopt this provision so that the parties are limited to the maximum number of people who can be elected, the max cap to Commissioner Levin's point. But it stands in the way of gaming of the system. Because if you take a look at it, the major parties, if all 7 positions are open to all the voters, the major parties can go out and say, vote for our 5 Republicans and then vote for our 2 Norwalk Party people, whatever, I'm making up a party, but whatever it may be. Or the Democrats can say, vote for our 5 Democrats and 2 Green Party or working family parties. And you end up in a situation that is, where the dominant party still has an awful lot to say. So that is the reason you limit the number of people can vote for, as well as the number of people the party is nominated for. But you have the option, but I want to present it to you, of being able to vote for all 7 if you want to do that. With the cap, that there would be only 5 people, maximum 5 people would be elected from any party.
May I ask a question, Steve, about that?
Yeah.
How would that look on the ballot? Like, how would people know that if there are, let's say, 20 names on the ballot? Most people, you're going to end up with a lot of ballots that are tossed because people are going to vote for 7, thinking that there's 7 seats on the, at large, et cetera. How is that going to look on an actual ballot?
It says, please choose 5. I've done it many years in the town I live in. There's this limitation, and I've never voted for more than, well, in our case, 3. The numbers, you can't vote for more than 4. You just vote for no more than 4. That's what you do. The ballot is clear and says you can only vote for 4 candidates.
We already do something.
Yeah, so that is done throughout the state of Connecticut without much discrepancy or problem, to my knowledge.
Okay, I just assumed that was, you're going to end up with a lot of faulty ballots that way, but okay.
You could, but it hasn't happened in the communities that I'm aware of.
So is there a motion to approve Article 3? Item 6.
I'll make
Well,
a
wouldn't it have to be approved with an amendment of some sort, or no?
Sorry?
Would it have to be approved with an amendment of some sort?
Do you move the item as read or as modified through my explanation? So I get the 2 choices would be to be able to vote for all 7 with the cap on majority party representation, or to vote for 5. The way I read it initially was the limitation of voters. The second one would be the expansive. So that's would be the motion. There's no need for an amendment because there's nothing on the floor.
Is that in the nature of a change that we're presenting to the Common Council, in that the Common Council is simply suggesting that we add 2 seats, which we can do by a vote, but changing it to either be people can vote for all 7 or people can vote for no more than 5. Is that in the nature of a change that we can't do at this late date?
No, because the council, I believe, was asking for a minority party, to lack of a better term, because that's what the statute is, a minority party representation component. And the 2 alternatives that I've read are both components of minority party representation votes in the state of Connecticut. So I would argue that it's not, that you have a choice.
Okay. I would, okay.
So I'd like to move to adopt number 6 in the manner that Steve described, limiting voters to vote for no more than 5 candidates rather than 7.
Okay.
I'm probably leaving out other details, expand the at-large council seats by 2 and restrict the nomination by parties. Is that right? Is that also part of it?
That was part of Steve's language.
Okay, yes.
And can I just say, you will see this language. One of the problems we have with the short constricted timeframe is I'll have the language for you on Monday, and we'll talk later about possible follow-up meeting. And members of the council have to look at this as well.
John?
Just so I, and frankly, any other official here, and I'm asking this is sort of where we are in this process right now. When you're putting on a motion or voting on a motion, you basically, what are you actually saying? Are you saying we are interested in looking at language on this particular item? Is this going to be in the thing that is submitted back to the council?
This is the thing that's coming back to the council.
Okay, I want to just make sure that's correct, because one of
It's
the.
part of their final report.
Okay, because one of the, and because you're mentioning language that the members are going to review, so now they're voting on something where they haven't actually seen the language.
I'm aware of that.
Yeah, no, I know, you
Yeah,
are, but
painful,
I,
yeah.
and I only say that with this particular item because there was a concern that I raised last night about one of the issues with this being parties using this, especially if they win other district seats where now there's a minority that tips into a majority. And I just want to make sure that that scenario is actively considered when discussing minority party representation. You know, and that's something that you guys think about before sending language back to us.
So the suggestion is that we will, I've done some drafting, but it was hard for me to draft something without having a firm position.
Totally understand.
So they will have all this language in the next few days to consider over the weekend to look at on Monday. My hope is, the chair and I talked about this a little bit, but I know everybody's schedules are really difficult, that we can have a short Zoom meeting, either the same week or early the following week, once we know when the council is going to set up their special meeting to address the charter, so that we have an opportunity to socialize the actual language with the council.
Yeah.
Because we have no language at this moment. We're going to draft the language. I have a good jump on the language, but we will need to have that dialogue, and they can make modifications before they send their final report. That would be the objective of hopefully a relatively short meeting after the meeting on the 5th.
I just
We're
want to
very
say that,
truncated here, very truncated.
may I say that notwithstanding your explanation, Steve, I think that this is either adding 2 seats at large or not. I think that these alterations of doing it one way or the other way, I think that is changing something, and I know that your legal opinion is that it isn't, and I certainly respect that. So I think that if you're going to have 7 seats at large, I think everyone should be able to vote for all 7. I also think that we have not considered, what Josh has just mentioned, the possibility that these 2 seats could operate to flip an 8-7, or what would have been an 8-7 majority on the city council. And I think that is a reason that I'm going to vote no. But if we are to add 2 seats to the common council or to the city council, I think that the voters should be able to vote for all 7.
Okay, so I just want to remind Commissioner Camacho that the reason why this proposal is coming to the Charter Revision Commission from the Common Council is because they recognized a need to allow to create the possibility of proportional representation for voters that are not achieving that under the current voting system. The proposal only relates to the at-large seats. Yes, there would be 10 other council seats that are elected in district. That's not what this proposal is about. There is no question that we could dream of all kinds of different permutations of what might possibly happen with those in district seats, but it's really not germane. I suppose anything could happen. We can look at what has happened in recent years, and it would appear as if the in-district seats have been very effectively, 9 of the 10 seats have been elected by the majority party. I don't anticipate that changing very soon. I hope it does, but we'll see. This is really just to address the lack of proportional representation just among the at-large council seats.
Right. And I agree that no one party, if we're going to go to 7, no one party can nominate more than 5. I agree with that.
And you understand that the reason why Attorney Mednick recommended limiting the votes to 5 out of the 7 available seats is, and of course, there will be more than almost certainly way more than 7 candidates for the at-large positions. And that is to prevent political parties from gaming the system, to use the system to achieve the same goal of electing their preferred candidates. And that has happened in other cities that have a minority party representation.
In my view, it's not gaming the system if the majority of the voters of the city of Norwalk vote for the top 7 vote getters. That is the system, in my view.
That is your view, but I just want to remind you that that is the system that currently elects 5 at-large council members who get 55% of the votes, and yet the 45% of the votes they don't get is not represented.
That's
the problem. That is the
how
problem
democracy
that
works.
we are trying to solve.
That is not a problem in my view. That is democracy at work.
I agree with Commissioner Camacho. I don't see it as a problem either.
So I can't speak for the whole council, but when putting this together, speaking to a lot of council members, one of the biggest things that I heard was allowing the voters to have a choice. And I think one of the key things is that the top 7 vote getters are the ones that are elected. And I think that having people vote for all 7 might ensure, especially when it comes back to the council, it might ensure some trust that the voters still have the choice. Voters voted for all 7 members. I think that might be a little bit more appeasable to the council, especially with me just speaking to everyone on the council. It might be a little bit concerning, as Mr. Camacho brought up, about not only people voting for 5, and then the other 2, say if they only get 1,000 votes out of 10,000 votes, they still got to see that the council might not seem too fair. So I get your point about gaming the system, but just being able to get this to something that passes, I think it might be more appeasable if voters can vote for all 7 members that are elected, that are going to be representing them on the council.
But if
I was giving you 2 alternatives. I wasn't taking a position.
Ed, correct me here if I'm wrong, or Doug, if I understand the system now, in a district, you could have 5 names, 6 names, whatever. So top 3 people. I don't want to they get elected.
It's a top 2.
Or the top 2, I'm sorry, the top 2 that get elected. So I don't see this as being any different.
Correct. And I think the only change would be is just that there's a cap of the nominations, but the electorate still has a full swing at everybody who's on the ballot. And I think that would just ensure some voter security, that they're able to vote.
So I'm sorry, but so we're just gonna add 2 council people at large.
Yes, that's the proposal.
And there's 7 people that want to run for those seats.
Well, with the cap on
The cap
the
on
number.
Each party can only have
Yeah.
5
Yeah.
for those seats. Is there a situation?
That's the part that bothers me. Sorry, but it does.
What part?
The part that you put a cap on how many from each party can hold a seat.
In at large.
At large, yeah.
And why is that? Can you say why it's a bother?
Well, it just seems that's. I think the point you made, somebody could get 1,000 votes.
That's true now.
Not if you're not in the top 2.
Well, is it?
You could get 1,000 votes, and as the 3rd person, you're not going to get the election. It's the top 2, unless that 1,000
in the
puts you as 1 or 2 in district. Yeah.
Well, the way that it has worked is like there's one person right now with the way that it's laid out is the top 5 are the people that get elected. Number 6 has been the same person for the past 2 elections, is Mr. Rich Bonifant. And he's gotten really close to coming in and getting on the council. And that's probably been the most competitive race so far. So if you do that, they should still probably get like 6,000 or something around there. They still get a significant amount of votes. But what it is it's not, and again, if you expand it to 2, it's just adding 2 more seats so that people have a diversity of thought and putting those guardrails in place where you have diversity of thought and people are represented on the council.
Is there a scenario where the 2 minority party seats, for lack of a better term, could flip it? Right? If it was 8-7, say there's 8 Republicans, 7 Democrats. Now the 2 have to be Democrats. Now you have more Democrats than Republicans.
But they don't necessarily have to be Democrats because
But it could.
it could be,
It
yeah.
could. That's trouble.
That is a problem.
Right, to have the balance, whoever the party is, change because of the 2 guaranteed seats.
So,
They're not guaranteed seats.
wait, yeah, they're not.
It's 2 non-majority seats, so let's say you have 8 in one party.
No,
But the non-majority candidates can actually finish first in the election,
Good.
and in some communities do.
Right, but in the- but
very
if-
well, yeah.
Under the proposal, there is a scenario where the 2 non-majority seats would flip it so that that party is now the majority.
there's a scenario where only one candidate gets all the votes. I mean, there's all kinds of different scenarios. So.
It's not unrealistic.
But if you look. if
And you have, it's now and on.
Look, I'm looking at the way Norwalk elections have played out in recent years, and I would sadly call it somewhat.
Jumping, you
unrealistic.
rejected that when I said, let's look at how they played out in recent years and it could shift back from not 14 to 1 Democrats. Right? You can't say, well, you gotta look at recent years for one thing, but not the other.
I am confused by what you were referring to.
When we had this discussion last time, I suggested the reason that we do not need minority party representation is because if you go back 2-3
Oh, I see.
election cycles,
Okay.
you had a bunch of Republicans. And that has changed. We've discussed national politics, the whole thing, and you rejected that. So you can't say that this scenario I'm proposing that absolutely is realistic can't happen because of recent election cycles. If it's a thing that's possible, you have to consider it. And it's not that unrealistic to think that in coming years, you could have an 8-7 split and the 2 seats now change it.
Doug's got his hand up.
Doug?
This whole, I'm sorry, we're going back to the whole discussion again. We keep diverting back into minority, but the council sent to us now a suggestive change. They asked for this.
Yes.
All right. And that, in the way that the intent, way I understand Jalen was explaining this last night and again today, that the goal is to put up 7 candidates get to win, but no party can put up more than 5 candidates.
Correct.
Period. So you're limiting the amount of participation by any party, because this isn't about Democrats, this isn't about Republicans, independent, it's just governing and government. And that's what we have to look at this as, because you're right, the pendulum swings, all right? And, for the last 10 years, it's swung totally different, and that happens. But this is coming from the council with a request. So I don't know, we sent back something else and this is what they're asking for instead. I don't have a problem with it. It's a good compromise in my books. Gets away with having to insert the minority rule, even though the state has everybody else but us and somebody else not doing that. I think it's a good compromise. And you can vote for all 7. I'm with Ed. But everybody should have the right to vote for all 7.
I agree.
May I suggest that we vote, that we have 2 votes, one, whether or not to keep our recommendation, and if that fails, then vote on what our recommendation would, vote on what the council has suggested, and having voters, giving voters the right to vote for all 7.
So
Didn't we do that?
we've already voted yes on item 3, which was to retain 15 council members. So we've essentially said no to what we sent them, which was 20. Not,
You had no proposal on that one. So
Right.
there is no commission position, because you had no proposal.
we had no proposal on that position. So, I'm sorry, Ed, the
Oh,
vote
I
would
see.
be,
So Oh, I see. So the original was to go for 20, and so that we decided to vote to keep it at 15. Was that what it was?
Correct. That was item
Yeah, yes.
3.
Okay,
Right,
so
yes.
so now the issue is whether or not, oh, I see. So whether or not we
Now the
add
issue is
the
whether or
two
not we
seats, that's the only
expand it to-
vote. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the only
and
vote.
I'm not opposed to it. I think having more voices on the council is a good thing. I have a problem with the scenario where you have the non-majority seats flipping it so that that party is now the majority. It doesn't matter which party it is.
Well, so my suggestion is then if we vote, I mean, there's what I see is 2 votes or a vote and a sub vote. One is to expand the council to 17, have no one party be able to nominate more than 5. And then the second question is whether or not the voters will be able to vote for all 7. Is that accurate?
I think we could combine that into one motion. Jill, did you have some?
Yeah, just one thought on the concerns about this, like just kind of being the tipping point for the majority.
Yeah.
The districts, they are different voting structures, but the district voting, a lot of time it reflects the citywide elections. So if you have 2 or 3 districts that are going to swing one way, 9 times out of 10, that's going to be a reflection in the at-large seats and also the mayoral seats. And that's historically been the case as well. So if you have this, especially the way that it's written, it's just the top 7 vote getters. And it's really just a cap. And we keep talking about minority representation, but it's a cap in majority representation, and it just allows it. Whoever gets the top 7 are the ones that's going to represent. It doesn't save it. It could be independents, Working Family Party, and Democrats. And I think that just allows it for people to change it. But I do hear those concerns, but the districts often kind of reflect on the citywide as well.
But Jalen, to your point, if it's a close election because the tide has turned and districts have flipped, having these 2 guaranteed seats, I guess, for the minority party, assuming those 2 seats go to the members of the party in district that have flipped seats, it could change the balance of power on a common council, on the city council, and that's my concern. So that's why we have 2 votes. My initial vote is no. Let's keep. I don't agree with the 17 or the 2 guaranteed seats. But if we vote for it, then I would want the voters to be able to vote for all 7. So that's why I think of it as 2 separate votes.
And I appreciate that. And if I do the same thing, if you have like 2 or 3 districts that flip, even in the current structure, that's probably going to be reflected in the at-large seats currently, and even without the minority representation. So if it is a close race, it's probably going to be a close race on the citywide as well, because you're flipping districts. And that's just been political strategy as we look at it. Like there's certain districts that we know that the mayor needs to win. And if he's down on that, then we start getting nervous because they start getting pulled in district, and that's just how it's made up. It's the same voter block. It's not like districts are going to vote. They usually vote row A or row B. That's the slogan, and I think that's going to be reflected in the citywide election. So
But then-
a close election, you're going to have those, and this doesn't just, it's the top 7 vote getters. So in this scenario that we have, and we can talk about what ifs and go down that road, but if say the Democrats do, the Republicans could have came in position 1, 2, and then Democrats got 3, 4, and it could be any type of scenario that we have. So we could talk about what ifs and how it could work, but it's a lot of different scenarios. But really what it is just cap in the top 7 vote getters. The people still choose who are represented.
But then what's the point in capping party representation at 5 then for the common council? I mean, isn't that to guarantee 2 seats for another party? Let's say the party that flips seats in the in-district side will get 2 additional seats, potentially, and actually flip the balance of power on the city council.
I don't think that's the way that it's written. I think that's just how it could be looked at, but it's just the top 7 vote getters. And I think if you look at those 2, like saving those 2 seats, it's just the top 7 vote getters. And hopefully we get competitive and it just changes, and it will change. The pendulum switches all the time.
Okay. My motion, I would move to first vote on whether or not to expand the common council to 7 with minority representation, and the second vote, whether to be able to vote for all 7. I would like to vote on it in that way, to see what the appetite is for the 17 seats to begin with.
You already have a motion on
Yeah,
the floor?
there is a motion on the table already. And that was to approve the proposal that was made by the council to this commission with the modification described by Attorney Mednick.
Did you made that motion?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
we were all here.
Let's make sure it's you.
Can I?
What Attorney Mednick said for the record was that there's 2 alternatives. In terms of the number of people can vote for. So.
Which is why I think it makes sense to break it into
Yeah,
two.
and so I read one first and read one second.
Mhm.
I could have done it the other way around. So it was not it was to give you a sense of what communities do.
Maybe a little out of order, but since I came up late, would you mind repeating those 2 scenarios?
So what I proposed based on my interpretation of what the council was doing and conversations I had with some of the council members today is that effective with the municipal general election of 2029, there shall be 7 council members at large elected by the city. That's the fundamental basic point. There are 2 alternatives in the next sentence. This next sentence says that you can either vote for only 5 of them, or you can vote for all 7 of them. All right. And I explain why some communities have the lesser number. Each major or minor party is defined by the general statutes, and petitioning slates of candidates, if permitted by the general statutes, may nominate up to 5 candidates. That's how you develop the cap concept for the members at large. And those 7 candidates receiving, to the councilman's point, the highest number of votes shall be elected. So the distinction is between you have a cap that creates your minority party representation, or the cap on majority representation. And the real choice is, do you allow the voters to vote on all 7 or just on 5?
And the reason why Attorney Mednick has proposed 5 versus 7 is because in real towns in Connecticut, I'm not going to name New Britain or Hartford, the majority party has been able to game the system by having their preferred candidates run as a different party than what they're currently capped at, and achieve the same result that they would have had the cap not been in place.
Just to be clear, it's not what Attorney Mednick proposed.
No, I proposed it. It's the alternatives that Attorney Mednick described.
Just to your point about non-Democrats right now not having representation on the council, right? How is being allowed to vote for only 5 of your seven representatives amenable in that scenario? You now have 2 people on the council representing, and you didn't have any voice to say in who those people were. You can only go for 5 of the 7.
Right, so
I'm
great
sorry.
question.
Can I, there's a lot of, talking that I'm here, I'm sorry, virtually, because I had to dial in late. Kyler, I could not hear what you were saying.
Sorry, Joe, my question was, if the current issue that we're trying to address is that non-Democrats do not have a representation on the council, right? Because it's winner take all, it's 14 and 15. How would only being able to vote for 5 of your 7 at-large representatives be any better? You now have 2 people on the common council and you had no say in it. As opposed to right now, there are 5, everyone has a say in who those 5 are. It might not be the people that everyone wanted if you weren't on the winning side. But to me, to say you only get to choose 5 of the 7, it exacerbates the problem, or actually makes it worse than it is now. Because now you get to vote for all 5. Those 5 have to win, but everyone at least has a say in that. I don't see how voting for 5 of the 7 would be any better.
Again, the
can we
only reason that you would use 5 instead of 7 is just to prevent the type of gaming of the system that has been used in other Connecticut cities to defeat this type of majority cap. That's the only reason.
So you would be okay, despite all your other arguments about how this works now, with having 2 people on the council that you didn't get to vote for?
Well, I mean, right now, 45% of the voters have
Get
5
to
people
vote.
on the council.
But they get to vote for all. And the parties get to run
Right.
for those seats.
Right, but again, we're describing a systemically, I know Councilmember Goldstein does not like this word, but a systemically disenfranchised
Because it's the
minority.
wrong word.
Okay,
It
you could say that, but the
Who's not
reality
being
is.
allowed to vote right?
Okay, but the same argument has been made in, towns in Alabama where it would be impossible for the Black citizens to elect anyone to the council because they don't have a majority. I'm sorry, I know you don't like this argument, but I'm
Because
describing
it's
to you.
absurd. It's absurd to say that people who get to vote for the 5 council member right now that there's somehow a parallel to the Jim Crow Savage.
I'm
It's
telling you that the
Okay.
election system is the same.
Okay, Doug has
Okay.
his hand up and then let's vote on this. Doug,
All right, so my understanding, so we can maybe move this along, was first the question of trying to split the question to adding 2 more members to the city at large, because we voted now not to accept what was originally proposed by the charter revision question, which was 20, if I remember correctly. So we're adding 2 more positions to the council at large. And then the second part of this is responding to part of the request that they put in that there were 2 proposals by Mendrick, and the one that to me seems to get away from the title would be that no party could, you can vote for all 7, but no party can nominate more than 5.
that's the 2 pieces, and I think we would have to amend John's motion on this item, because we have to, we do need to have that second
Well,
part.
that's why I'm proposing then this, what Ed asked for. I'm making a motion to split the items under the proposed.
Well, we have
Article
a motion, so
20.
John would either have to withdraw it or amend it so that we could do the split.
No, I can make a motion to split his proposal. I certainly
Okay.
can.
It's a friendly amendment.
So I'm making a proposal that we split this into a vote. All right, vote number 1, whether or not to add 2 council members to the at-large seat for a total of 7 at-large seats.
With a majority cap.
Okay, and the second
No,
thing
we're
that
good
I'd
with that
make a
second.
motion
That's the second.
is to put forward that all 7 candidates can be voted for by the public, word it however you Smith it you want it, but no party can nominate more than 5. That would be the second part of the motion. This accomplishes, I think, what we're trying to get to. So that's so I'm making a motion to split the question. That's my first motion.
So I'm clear on the second part. The one party only being able to nominate 5
Correct.
is a part of either proposal, right? Whether you're voting for 5 or 7, the item would have a cap at 5.
Correct.
Okay.
I think.
No, yeah, correct for nominations from the parties.
For nominations from the party,
Vote for whatever- Public can vote for whatever 7 they want.
that's correct. That is the second part of the. Are you voting for a
Correct.
maximum of 5, or do you get to vote for all?
So the first part is simply,
Yeah.
are we going to add the 2 at large?
Correct.
But,
Right.
and that's with a majority
Yeah,
cap
that's-
of 5 out of the 7.
Right now, we're just
Oh,
responding to
Mhm.
the
Right.
council's request that we add 2 at large members of the council. That's part 1. Once we vote on that, then we can start the weeds about all the other aspects.
So I just want you to know that the recommendation that came from the council to this commission was to add 2 at-large council seats and restrict the at-large council seats to no more than 5 for a
And I
majority party.
believe that's why Mr. Hempstead has split this into two categories, because the first part of it, because I think we're pretty much all in agreement that we would like to adopt our council's recommendation to add the two at-large candidates. If we agree to that, then we can now discuss whether it's 5
That
or
is
7 or whatever it is.
When you say 5, 7, that's just the voting side, right?
Correct.
Okay, so again,
So you have, well, Doug has amended your.
okay,
I
is it-
put, I got a motion on the table to split the question into the two parts. So my first.
We have to vote in favor of Doug's motion to split it.
Well,
First.
how
There
do
we
we,
go. Let's get this over with.
how do we deal with Mr. Levin's motion that is still on the floor?
It has been
I just
changed.
did. I'm making the split.
Okay, so
That
that,
is-
we can do that, you can.
We have to agree to split it,
Okay,
and then we have to vote on part one, and
Just
then
like
we have to vote on
I'm
part.
not clear of that procedurally, so thank you. Okay.
Okay. All in favor of,
I just want to make it clear, we are voting on,
John,
please state it.
we are you have made a motion for item 6. Doug has made a motion
To
to
change,
split it.
yes,
We have to okay that,
okay,
and then we vote on part 1, and then we vote on part 2.
okay, can you please repeat what the motion is to split what and what?
Doug's motion is to vote first on whether we add 2 at-large council members. Part 2 is, do 5 people get to vote, or do you get to vote for 5 of the at-large, or do you get to vote for 7 of the at-large?
Okay,
That is that is choice 2.
this is a problem because a portion of the council's recommendation is missing from what you just described.
The council's recommendation is not in this thing that we got. So the
John,
5
I
is.
think what John is trying to say is that the portion that's missing is that the, no more than one party can nominate 5 people if we go to
Yes.
17.
Yes.
If we go to 7 at large, I think that's what's missing.
Agreed, yeah.
Is
Yes,
that
correct.
something that has to come from you, or is that something we need
Yes.
to add to the motion? Steve? Is that part of the language? Is that something we need to add now to amend?
It was in the language I read, and it was in
Right.
John's motion, what was in John's motion, he chose.
That's fine. I think the maximum of 5 is for either scenario. The maximum of 5 per
The cap at
party.
the
The cap
cap.
at 5 per party is part of either scenario, whether you think you should get to vote for 5 or 7. Okay? So we have to vote to approve Doug's motion to split it into 2. All in favor?
All right.
All right.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Okay, we will now vote on whether to add 2 at-large seats as part 1 of this to the common council. We can do a roll call. John,
Again, add 2 at-large seats with a majority cap.
No.
Just add 2.
Just the 2
Do
seats.
you agree to add 2 seats? We're gonna go, do
And then there's
you
part
agree to
2.
agree to add 2 seats at that large
You're
candidate?
kidding me.
No, it's, we split it
Just-
up.
Let's
there
hope
were a whole discussion for the last
Uh,
5 minutes.
Okay,
longer than that.
so no, that's not what I thought I voted on, and I'm a little bit surprised. I thought that what you said we were voting on was simply to make a separate vote for whether voters may vote for 5 of the 7 candidates or 7 of the 7 candidates.
We are breaking into 2 questions. Question 1, would you like to add 2 at-large seats to the common council? Part 2, separate vote. Do you think voters should get to vote for 5 or 7? And in either scenario there would be a cap at 5 for the amount of people, amount of candidates that one party can
So both scenarios,
have 5. I said it a couple
Okay.
times.
thank you,
Okay. So John, are you in favor of expanding the council
Yes.
at large to 7?
as you've described, yes.
Jim?
Yes.
So yes. Carl?
Yes.
Yes. I am a yes. Joe?
Yes.
It's a yes. Ed?
I'm a no.
It's a no. Doug?
Yes.
It's a yes. Tanya?
Yes,
Now, we go to part 2.
Joe, did Joe vote on this part?
She did.
She did. Joe was a yes.
Very good.
Okay, part 2, and this is either scenario, there would be a cap on the number of candidates that one party can have. So now, We have to have a vote on whether whether the voters get to elect, 5 of the candidates or 7 of the at-large candidates.
Request for discussion before we take.
Please.
I just wanted to, just reflect that Mr. Seed had suggested that we vote for all 7. So that's coming from the council, that they would be amenable to that, and I'm also amenable to that.
Well, I think the motion, whoever makes the motion should pick the number. Right, so then we're voting for that number. If it doesn't pass, that's the other.
Well, I think the split was, John's proposal, in fairness, was for limitation.
The cap.
So you need to amend part 2 to increase it to the all 7.
So I move to amend to increase it to all 7.
Do you see my point?
I do.
Yeah.
I agree.
But with the cap, majority party.
The majority party is in either scenario. It's
Yep.
whether it's 5 or 7.
Yes,
Ed has made a motion.
To amend.
To
part two,
amend part 2. To include. For the now 7 at-large candidates, the public is to vote for all 7 of them. Rather than only 5. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Oh, hold it. I got a
Doug has a
question.
question.
Pardon?
Doug has a question.
Okay, yeah.
You're only stating one part of this. The other part of this is no party can nominate more than 5. Is that the
Correct.
second part of?
No, I've said that,
Okay.
Doug. So.
Oh,
in
I'm
either
sorry.
scenario,
Well,
there's the
it seemed like it
5%.
was split up the way you said it. So
No,
I'm
no,
trying to
no,
make sure that.
it's, you're voting for
Okay.
5 or you're voting for 7. Either way, one party can only nominate 5 candidates. It's just, do you have a say in the other 2?
Yes. So I believe we
Okay.
should vote for all 7. Okay, good.
Yeah, well, that's the motion.
motion.
That's the motion that Ed has made right now. So we are voting on whether you think that the voters should get to vote for all 7 of the at-large candidates. Okay, we'll do a roll call for that as well. I'll start, go down the list the same way. John?
I vote in favor, yes.
John's a yes on all 7.
Yes.
Okay. Jim?
Yes.
Is a yes. Carl?
Yes.
Yes, I am a yes. Joe?
Yes.
Is a yes. Ed?
Yes.
Is a yes. Doug?
Yes.
Is a yes. Tanya?
Yes,
Is a yes. All right, that part 2 passes unanimous.
And was it understood that this takes effect in 2029? That was.
Which gives the building department enough time to build more seats in the.
No, only under a first proposal.
This one said that was part of it.
Just hanging chairs.
Hammock system.
Yeah, exactly. I thought this held 17 hours, all right? Yeah.
Building department doesn't have to do anything.
Well, whatever, the construction department, the people in charge of.
There's
doing stuff
18
like that.
seats. Maybe we should expand the council by just 1 more then.
Okay, item 7, this is Article 4, Section 47C, compensation fixed by council. We have been presented with 2 options by the council and their recommendations to either consider adding a baseline salary for the council in an amount equal to 3% of the mayor's salary, or as an alternative, an expense reimbursement for necessary expenses subject to a cap. This would be effective for the 2029 municipal election. So would anyone like to make a motion for one of those 2 scenarios?
I will move for the 3% of the mayor's salary scenario.
The salary.
Correct.
I would second
View
that.
that it's when you get into the expensing process, that is going to be way too complicated and adds unnecessary complexity and potential confusion, in my opinion.
I mean, I was in favor of the reimbursement model. I think it adds a layer of accountability. I understand there's some work there. I know that could be potentially related to one of the other proposals we had, which was to allow the council to add employees. My thought there was that while everybody, I think, runs for office with the right intentions, you have a scenario where somebody who's getting paid to do nothing. Right, as opposed to.
That's true now.
Pardon?
That's true now.
With
That's-
60 bucks a month. as
That's the
opposed to
change.
$50 a month.
50
Yes.
bucks a month, it would now be $5,000 a
So
year.
what we're really talking about is just simply changing the compensation. you know, the decision to work or not work is always going to be at the discretion of the individual.
Correct, but in the reimbursement model, if you don't work, you don't get any money.
I mean, I think the concern was that in this year especially, or these years where the taxes have gone up a little higher than in previous years, that giving a pay raise to the common council would be sort of a non-starter and could kill the entire thing. I think there's a way to separate that question out on the ballot, but I think that I don't know of any person that in the abstract would think that 3% of the mayor's salary for an individual member of a body that is co-equal with the mayor is is a lot of money, is a big lift. I think if you extrapolate it out in numbers, maybe they might think so, but a 3% of the mayor's salary for a co-equal branch of the government it does not seem like a lot to ask or to pay for the kind of work that the common council does. So it could be separated out. It doesn't have to be a poison pill, but I think the stipend scenario is fraught with all kinds of difficulties and potential for misunderstandings and abuse and everything else. I just don't sort of like what that could look like. So that's why I support the 3%.
Okay, Doug?
Yep, well, I got a mixed bag here. I think $50 a month is just fine. You're not getting it for the money. 2, I agree with Mr. Camacho and others that I think to do an expense, you would have to do an expense report. That expense report would have to conform to the purchasing rules of the city of Norwalk. How do you submit a bill from a babysitter? All right. That person would have to produce a 1099. I'm just saying that and I think they would allow for opportunities for other kinds of abuses and inequities. At least a straight salary defines here's what you get, all right, and here's what you get paid to do your job. So I think that is an easier solution, but the easiest solution in my books, anyhow, and I think I brought it up last night, is go to the state legislator and get it changed. We discussed this early on. We're stuck with that salary bit that you have to go through a process, and the state legislator can just undo that. So the council could sit there and do anything it wants to do with the salary. I mean, I think that's a better proposal, but all I'm just suggesting, it's better to go a salary to me than an expense report because it creates all kinds of bookkeeping, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
No, fair enough. Joe?
Sorry about that. No, as I mentioned last evening, I agree on Commissioner Hempstead's point about the administrative expenses. But again, I would like to point out that you look at the Board of Ed, they put in a lot of time, they have a lot of committees, a lot of work. And to say that the Common Council, and I'm not denigrating them, but I'm saying that you'd be like, well, if Common Council is being compensated, why aren't we? So we need to kind of address things like that. Not right now, but it's an issue.
But the law prohibits us compensating the board.
Understood, but what is fair and responsible and equitable? Throwing it out there.
Joe, I agree 100%. There are so many instances where state law restricts the flexibility of local government from being fair, equitable, and reasonable. And this is just one more of those. Let's hope these state laws can be changed in the future. But alas, we got to work with what we have.
All right, well, how about, is there a motion for one of these two options? Would someone like to make that motion?
I'd like to make a motion for the 3% increase.
Okay, so I believe John already did. So yeah, that's
mayor.
my fault, Tanya. So John has made a motion to add a baseline salary for the council in an amount equal to 3% of the mayor's salary.
Just for clarity, this would be in lieu of the current $600.
Correct. Yeah. All in favor?
Just
Can I just
one.
one clarification, can I just ask, we made a change that, or as otherwise according to law, I believe there was some language in there that or in accordance with law, would that language still be in there? So this is simply, this 3% is simply taking the place of the $50?
That is correct. That is correct, Ed.
Okay.
John, you had something to add?
Yeah, I think it's really important for the commissioners to be aware of exactly what the numbers are that we are discussing. Currently, the mayor of Norwalk is paid about $182,000 a year in salary, if I'm getting that right. Whatever it is, I did the math. 3% of the current mayor's salary in the current budget is $5,485.53.
So that's a little high. It's actually around 150. And so that means that each common council would get around $370 a month. And
I
then,
believe the salary is 180. I believe it's gone up.
okay, well,
Yeah.
according to the internet.
Jared, do you know that?
Okay.
Either way.
The danger of it, the danger of asking the internet.
But either way, even that number brings you a little closer if legislation passes to that 600. And honestly, as a mother and having children and having a family, that really isn't a lot of money for the time that they spend on a daily basis. So.
No, absolutely.
The budget amount for FY 25 it was about 178,000.
Okay.
And I ran the calculation. I believe it amounted to 3% amounted to about I think it's 5,300. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that's it. Around 5,000.
So anyway, the numbers do matter. 3% is just a number, but the dollars are a more real number that ultimately will probably be part of the voters' consideration. And I would just repeat Commissioner Camacho's desire to that the council break out this item as a separate referendum item if possible.
Okay, Doug, and then we're gonna vote. Doug and then Jim. Doug, you're on mute.
Steve, just a legal question here, the way the city's set up. So technically, if you're an elected official and even with the $50 a month, you're an employee of the city of Norwalk, right? So does this allow?
They'll take taxes, they'll be W-2 employees.
Get the tax issue, are they then eligible for any benefits
No,
underneath this scenario?
not to my knowledge, I don't believe that.
No.
I'll defer to the CFO, no, no, the answer
So
is
it
no.
does, it just limits it to the salary, correct? That's it,
That is correct.
right? Okay, that's why I'm asking for clarity's sake. It's about $100,000 a year.
What?
Yeah, if you extrapolate it out to about
Minus the
the 17 members of the council, considering what you just passed, yeah, it would come out to about 90, maybe Ed's right, but I did the math,
Yeah,
it's just about 91,000.
90.
I
91,000.
So this discussion is about 3% as a salary, correct?
Correct.
I have a question for our councilors who are here. In your discussions, did you have a preference as to how you would like this to work? Would you prefer the salary to be increased, or would you prefer to have an expense that you could then get reimbursed?
I can speak for the council on this one. The vote was clearly for the former. It was for salary, not as an expense reimbursement program. An expense reimbursement program was discussed, but the vote is presented, and it was Councilmember Nicole Ayers who made the motion. And that was supported by the council, was for salary.
Okay, thank you. And your council's prepared if the voters in this tough, year, they decide to not approve this, you're okay with that.
Look, I speak representing the council. I mean, I personally voted against this particular item, but I, as the majority leader, speak for the majority and say that this was something that the majority of the council voted for. And I think that they were advised of the political issues that could present itself. And a majority of the caucus voted to essentially they believed that the equity concerns, the access concerns outweighed the potential political risk. And I think that there were many, I mean, as I said, when on our council meeting, there are many meritorious arguments for this. There are equity arguments for this that are absolutely valid. And, you know, we want, and Councilmember Seed said this as well at our council meeting, that we want people from all different walks of life and all different backgrounds to be on the council and know that there are financial barriers to doing so, considering the time commitment and considering currently members earn around $600 a year. But I mean, we also recognize that, you know, I think Commissioner McQuaid made a very eloquent point last night about the fact that, you know, there is a political reflexiveness toward giving the council a raise, especially in an environment where, you know, taxes have gone up and as costs have gone up. And obviously, you know, we voted to try and, you know, to be as low tax as possible, while also maintaining a high level of city service. But, you know, we understand that it's a fraud issue.
So as a citizen, I'm all for council members getting more money. I know you guys work a lot. I want you to get more money. So I would like to find a method that will get approved by the citizenry, and so that we can get you that money. And that's kind of where I stand. I lean, that's why I tend to lean more toward the expense reimbursement side of things personally, because I think that would be an easier lift, an easier sell. Better, yes, yes.
It's something that really kind of sold me on this, because some of your same concerns I brought up early on in our discussion with the council. But we're looking at this at 21 different talking points, but it's one charter. And I think that the way that I looked at it is that we're looking at the charter, and I think with some of the amendments that were made, and some of the work that you guys have made, I think that the messaging that I looked at is that, hey, we're trying to make better government and we're trying to be inclusionary. And I think as a package, and not to say that we're going to put this all as one question, because we didn't get there yet. But I think as a package on the charter and the things that we did, I think if you package it the right way, I think it sends the right message to the voters. And I think that we're going to have to do a lot of work for messaging, because there could be a lot of sound bites that say, hey, the Democratic controlled council is trying to get a raise, and that could look bad. But I think if you look at everything that's in this charter with 4-year terms and spending the council and maybe some of the budgetary stuff, if you guys get to it, I think it sends a message to the public. Now we're trying to do the right thing, and we're trying to create a better government that serves everybody in Norwalk. And I think that we are looking at it at different talking points, but I think if you look at it in its totality, I think we could send the right message to the citizens in Norwalk that we're trying to provide a better government for them.
I don't disagree with the word you just said. My concern is, it always is, how you're going to get that message out to the electorate.
Yeah.
Vigorously.
Okay, well, let's vote on this. So we have the motion for the 3% salary. All in favor?
Aye.
Sorry, we have John. Sorry, John. It's a yes. Jim? No. It's a no. Carl?
Abstain.
Abstains. Tanya?
Yes.
It's a yes. Ed?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Yes. I'm sorry, who did I miss?
You.
Doug?
And
Hey,
yourself.
Yes.
I'm a no, because I think it's too much of a football this year. And the state legislature is the way to go.
You are which?
I mean, yes, 1, 2, 3.
So I'm a no.
5, 2. Okay, passes 5-2. Item 8,
2. Passes 5-2.
appointment of common council
No, it's
employees.
5-2-1.
Appointment of common council employees, Article 4, or Section 47D. The council may at any time appoint an assistant clerk who should provide administrative assistance to the council. This was the item that allows the city council may at any time appoint by majority vote any additional employees as it finds necessary to effectively conduct the council's business. Is there a motion to approve this item?
I move to approve it.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I oppose this, because it would be the only part of city government that can do this, that can enlarge its number, and require the city to pay for it. It says any expand as, it could expand its staff sort of as, well, you know, to as large a number as they want. I'm not suggesting that they would do it to a super aggressive extent, but it would be the only part of the city that I think that can expand itself and require that the taxpayers pay for it without any input from any other part of the city government.
Ed, I would just add, I think you make a very good point. I think the way this is written, it is potential, you know, if the council was unified and intent on abusing this entitlement, this privilege, yes, it could be abused. You know, ironically, I believe it was written by lawyers, and it is what it is. You had mentioned earlier that you thought the council is a co-equal branch with the mayor. I would actually differ with that. I think the council has very, very limited authority to do much of anything beyond, let's say, appointing this commission. I think this it is a request for some amount of resources by the council members to be able to do their jobs better and achieve maybe not equality, but at least more than what they're able to currently.
Okay, Doug?
Maybe you have to hand up or did you?
He's muted.
Doug, you muted still?
Sorry about that. I have some concerns, questions, and I need some clarity on a couple items here. First of all, if we're talking about the Article 5, 4-7D and that appointment of the Common Council employees underneath that. separate
Yeah,
from the-
Article 4-7D.
Right, I'm sorry.
Item 8, yeah.
And just, yeah, and including the appointment of the
Reasonable.
Common Council employees, correct? That's part of that. Because I'm not seeing a header underneath that. Then the next, we're not discussing Article 7-71, right?
No, that's the next item.
Okay, all right, and I'm just.
The one about the
just trying-
council's ability to hire its staff.
Yep, so. I brought it up last night. The city charter is pretty clear that the council can hire an assistant city clerk. It's in there. And the duties that are performed are very clear in there and they're pretty much the duties. And a lot of this stuff is already there in that section. If they need an additional city clerk, they could always just put assistant city clerks instead of clerk. You add an S and you can point who you want as being an option rather than do some of this. The second part of this is if you create other positions in the city, and it used to be, I'm going back now 6 years, so maybe things have changed. If you want to create an employee position, you've got to go through personnel, create the position. The unions get to have a say as to what union that may fall into. All right, depending on what the job description is, et cetera, et cetera. It's not easy just saying we're going to hire somebody. So there's a whole process. And is it that somebody on what they used to call the ordinance list, or is that somebody that which would exempt them? Even though they get the same benefits. So there's a lot more to this. It's kind of got to be sorted out than just saying, go hire an employee. And then I really have difficulty personally understanding that why would the city council above anybody else say the Board of Estimate has to approve the money for this irregardless of? All right, nobody else gets to do that. You know, if you need parts for maintainers, you've got to ask for it in your budget and get it approved for your budget. So
You know,
I-
those are all fair points.
exempt them from the normal budgetary well, exempt them from the more, I don't see why you'd want to exempt them from the normal budgetary process.
Totally fair. And I think in order to move this along, I think, one of the things we had discussed last night was, when we run into these proposals that are just gonna be far too complex for us to tackle right now, is we vote no, and they can be addressed another time, and this might fall into that category. So we have a motion from John to approve it. I just suggest we vote on it. And in the interest of time, I think if we can't answer those questions right now, and the reality is we probably cannot. If any particular member thinks that we cannot address it, we vote no. That for each individual vote no.
Would it be possible for me to be heard, Chair?
Pardon?
Would it be possible for me to be heard?
It would. I'm gonna hear from Mr. Schmidt and then you, Nora. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to continue along the lines of what Doug was saying, is that if this is approved, there's a lot to be worked out. You're effectively creating a new class of employee that the city doesn't currently have. Are they going to be in a union? It's not as simple as just, hiring somebody. Space, where is the person going to go? Are we going to need to do some build out for them? We just had a couple of employees get hired and we had to do some build out for them. Who's going to supervise the employee? Will they be allowed to work remotely? And how does all this align with with our current policies and how we treat other employees? Will they be treated differently? Are they going to be part of a union? Will they form their own union? This is gonna start to go down the road of creating a legislative department. A small one to start anyway, but it will start to create a legislative department. And I know Attorney Mednick mentioned this during the last meeting, but I think it's important that if this does get approved, that to be sure that it goes through the entire budget process from beginning to the end, just as any other department would. So it's not, it doesn't come up at the end of the process where the council decides that they want to hire somebody, but it has to have full transparency, go through hearings and everything else that every other proposal has to go through. I'm also concerned with what others have brought up in terms of the checks on how many positions, is there any kind of ability of anybody, whether it's the administration or the BET or someone else to reject the proposal, or is it just the Common Council gets to do this and that's it? There's the potential for this to, without some kind of check, there's the potential for this to get out of hand and cost taxpayers a lot more money. And I just want to reiterate what others have said in other meetings, that we're here, my department's here. If the Common Council, and I think members of the Common Council have acknowledged this at other meetings, if they have questions, we're happy to respond. We do respond in a timely manner, just in terms of finance questions. And I think all the departments have done the same, whether it's DPW responding to their relevant committee. So, there is an avenue for getting responses if the proposal is related to subject matter and policies. If it's related to, if the proposal is just related to having clerks or assistants to to help help the council members to get out the message or to coordinate with them. To me, I look at them very differently. If you're looking for employees who are subject matter employees versus those that are more helping and assisting the council members to do their job, I think they're kind of two different types of employees. So I just wanted to put that out there because it is, as Doug started to say, this is, to me, it's a lot more complex than just saying, we're going to hire an employee or some employees.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to recognize Councilmember Jill Gagner.
Thank you so much, Chair. So I think a couple of things here, and to start with, the core sort of question here, right, is, again, it gets back to something I think Mr. Levin just referenced, right? The council is not currently a co-equal body. We need to make the council more of a co-equal body.
You're done.
One of the ways that we do that, one of the ways is done elsewhere in the state. So again, we're not suggesting something that is uncommon. Hartford has 9 staff members, 1 staff member per council member, right? New Haven has, I think, 3 or 4. Stanford has 3 or 4. This is not uncommon. This is in fact extremely common. This is part of how the legislative body is able to do its work. And the problem with having, the reason that the language is in there about the BET is because the council member, again, as an independent body, should not be having to ask, should not be begging for staff, right? We should have the authority to do it. Now, I understand the checks and balances question. I see that concern, I recognize it. And I think we could consider a couple different ways of doing it. One way would be to limit the number of staff, in the charter. One way would be to say that the BET, and again, obviously the council's, if the council were to decide to hire someone, it should go through the regular budget process. Absolutely. One way to do that, one way to potentially provide some check is to put something in, there. And I just, we'd have to think about how this works. The point is to not allow the BET to have the authority to keep the council from ever having staff, right? So there has to be some check and balance there. Otherwise, you could run into a situation where a mayor unhappy with the council blocks the council from getting staff. And that's the power problem. And as Attorney Bendick said, this is not typically an issue elsewhere because typically the council has line item authority. And so you're negotiating as equal partners. We're trying to grapple with this structure that does not treat the council as equal partners, and we're trying to sort of work through that. So I think, maybe in the first instance, there is a limitation of 2 or 3. I particularly liked Mr. Hempstead's suggestion that we just put an S on the assistant city clerks. I mean, I think that in some sense that is, an easy solution. The assistant city clerk is currently an ordinance employee. She is not a member of a union. I think that's a fairly easy suggestion. I will also say that a couple of things, so we are trying to, again, plan for the future. We're not trying to necessarily operate with just our current system. We've had a very good assistant city clerk. I will tell you right now that the assistant city clerk gets drawn into doing city business and not council business a ton of the time, right? We do not have a full-time person only doing council business as is, right? So there are potentially that could change in the future. There's lots of opportunities, but there is a lot of work that needs to get done. And that should be the prerogative of the council to figure out what sort of needs to be and again, make a proposal in the same way that the mayor gets to choose how to staff his or her own office. And I think the final point there, again, at this moment in time, Mr. Schmidt has been very forthcoming. I did not necessarily feel the same way about our prior CFO, right? The future council may or may not feel like they want independent advice on some issue or not, right? Everyone has the point of this provision is to create flexibility whereby the council could do this. Another option we could consider is that the council would be expected to create an ordinance that would create these positions, which I think is likely what would happen anyway. So there are ways to kind of provide checks and balances. There are things to consider here. I think it would be a shame to have this commission sort of say, well, it's too complicated of an issue. We are tackling a lot of complicated issues here. the charter does not, for any of the positions, the charter does not grapple with any of the questions that Mr. Schmidt raised about any of the other employees, right? We don't address, in the charter, whether the employee is going to be part of a collective bargaining group. We don't address any of these issues about sort of who's going to supervise it or how it's going to be structured. None of that is in the charter for other positions. So I don't see there's any particular reason that granting this council authority then means all those things need to be addressed now. The whole point is merely to have the council have the flexibility and authority if it comes to a moment where it wants to appoint someone other than, and again, perhaps we go to Mr. Hempstead's, the council can appoint 2 assistant city clerks or 3 assistant city clerks, and then they can sort out the responsibilities between them. So anyway, that was just my 2 cents on why this came up and where I think the need is, and the risks of having, an ability to have a supposedly independent power be constantly checked, and so trying to figure out some way to balance that.
May I make a point and also ask a question?
Yes.
I think your point, Tyler, that this is probably one of the things that's best left for the charter revision in 2 years, which I believe is still happening. But my question to Council Member Najolski-Eichner is, you indicated that the current assistant council is off doing city business much of the time. Would it be at least a temporary or an easier fix at the moment to have language that restricts what the assistant city clerk does, that her or his role is to assist the council only? Would that be a sort of a fix of some sort at the moment?
No, I don't think necessarily, because and this gets to a point that Mr. Schmidt made about having a legislative department, right? As long as the assistant clerk is sitting in the city clerk's office, it's an inevitable sort of nature of the job that the city clerk is going to pull her into doing work. And I, understand that. So I don't want to make it sound like we're demonizing anyone in the current system. The larger question is that it writ large, the council again, and the council may decide not to appoint anyone, right? This is why this is a charter question. This is an authority that the future councils can get to choose based on the experience and the setup of the future council. It is in many senses trying to bring us in line with what our peers have. And again, this gets back to the compensation issue as well. We are trying to align ourselves with what the standard is for councils in the state. And I think that's probably a better way to think about it than to sort of try to address any particulars of this exact moment, because that's not really what's at issue in a charter. I am not under the impression we are doing a charter again in 2 years. I am under the impression that we are doing a charter again in 10 years.
5 years.
5 years, yeah.
It's 5 years.
2030 is what the current charter says, and there's no proposal to change that.
10 was an option, it was rejected for 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not actually sure I'm not sure that I think the council was under the impression that we were considering it in 10 years. So but if that is what's currently written and we didn't make it a change, then I guess that's what it's going to be.
You do it anytime you want.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, Jim, and then I'm gonna ask Attorney Bendick if he has language that may be of use.
This is a very important topic, and I think if we had this come to our attention at the beginning or near the beginning of this process, we could have had workshops and we could have done a deeper dive into this. And I think that the way it's worded now is too vague. And I think that that's the only reason I have difficulty. I think the underlying motives are good. I just don't think we have time to sort this out. That's my comment.
So I'm not sure if anyone's made a motion. Oh, I'm sorry, there's more discussion.
So, yeah,
No,
Carl,
I just have a quick comment. I don't disagree that council needs help. I don't have any problem with that. I don't have a problem with council doing the hiring. But to what my fellow commissioner is talking about, I have concerns. There's no guardrails on this. So Attorney Bendick may have some language that he's going to talk about there, which I would love to hear, whether it's how many, how it's paid for, and so on and so forth. So I turn it over to you, my esteemed colleague.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I listened to the debates at the council and read the language. I've had a number of discussions with different people and have had experience throughout the entire state. And understand that the breadth of the language is pretty substantial. So what I tried to do today was kind of lay out a few concepts that would narrow the idea down. Legislative bodies in the larger cities have legislative staff. We want to call it department, whatever you want to call it, it is the way of the world. The largest is New Haven with about 9 or 10 people. Hartford has 9 people. Stanford has 4 or 5. And some of the other communities have Middletown, Little Middletown, very small town, has 2 people on staff as well. So what I wanted to do initially was to have language that said, in addition to the assistant city clerk, the council may appoint up to X, I put 3, professional, clerical, and administrative staff to assist it in the performance of its duties, for which the Board of Estimate and Taxation is required to appropriate the necessary funds. The reason for that language, I think, is self-evident. The council doesn't have the ability to do it. It is not a council function. They have no line item authority whatsoever. So on whatever number you agree on, if there is a number, or if it's infinite, the Board of Estimate would have to provide the funds. It would be, I'll read it in a moment. The president shall provide a proposed budget to the point of when does this start, of such staff requirements in the same manner as other departments under the charter, so that the president of the body, traditionally the president, you have a different situation here. You have a roving president, moves around every year. In many councils, the president serves for a full term. They tend to be the manager of the fund. They're the manager of the staff in that regard, et cetera. And they have to follow all the protocols, whatever they may be. If the members organize, they would have to, or if they fall into a particular group and a union claims them, there'd be those kinds of discussions. So a lot of the issues that were raised are issues, but they're not normally raised in charters. They're just raised in real time in the field. Another option is that the council may, upon a supermajority vote, request additional staff members, which request shall be taken into consideration by the mayor in the preparation of the annual budget. There's your safeguard in the current system. They can request additional, but it has to go to the mayor. And if the mayor says no, it doesn't go into the budget.
Let me,
yes.
May I ask a couple of questions about that?
Yes.
So the Board of Estimate, I mean, I have no doubt that the Board of Estimate, at least the ones I've served on, would, like any other department, if they want to add an employee or whatever, you know, there's a discussion, and if it's compelling, that the Board of Estimate, provided that the monies are available or can be made available without you know, too much more cost to the taxpayer, that the Board of Estimate would agree to that. But apart from that, could the Common Council not create a position by ordinance in any event to assist it
They
in
can
its
create it,
role?
but they could create it, and I think they have the authority to establish compensation, but they don't have the ability to amend the budget to pay the people the compensation they would establish under the ordinance, to my knowledge. I don't believe they can do that. They can, of course, adopt an ordinance, but if there's no funding for the ordinance, then there's no funding for the positions that would be created.
Right. So they would have to.
Let me give you an analog. Let me give you an analog. And I want to emphasize, without engaging in debate, that this is the legislative body of the community. I just had a case that came down late last week, where the authority of legislative bodies was acknowledged by a court that gave the legislative body the ability to sue a mayor, standing to sue a mayor, because it is one of 2 requirements in a charter. They're not the Public Works Department, very important department. They're not the Human Resources Department, critical department. They're not the Corporation Council. They're the legislative body. And so it's in a very unusual circumstance that they have to go and ask for this money. And that's why you put the provision in. I've had provisions in charters where you can mandamus a payment. Give you an example, in Waterbury, Connecticut, where they had enormous financial problems, they had an audit commission and the mayors kept defunding the audit commission. We put a provision in the charter that you cannot give the audit commission any less than it had in the prior year's budget. That prevented the Board of Aldermen and the mayor from reducing it. Now, they could starve the beast over 10 years, but the idea was you have some essential entities that need to have appropriate staff. And so that's the rationale and the mandatory element of it. On the second portion I just read about, the 2/3 increase or the supermajority, whatever you want to establish, that goes to the mayor. That is not automatically approved by the Board of Estimate. The mayor has to propose those additional positions, and if they don't, you know, they don't get the positions. And the council has very little leverage to counter that. They have some leverage, but they have not the kind of leverage that other bodies would have. So that's the theory if they wanted to expand, but there's a constraint on it to the point that the CFO is making. I also put a provision in here. We could refine this provision. All staff positions shall be compensated in accordance with best practices in the field and subject to the defined roles and responsibilities of the employees. The staff shall be provided to the point that the CFO is making, and it is a point, with adequate space for its operation and shall be supplied with all incidentals necessary for the operation and discharge of its duties to be paid from the general fund as appropriated. The staff of the council, and this is standard language I've seen in other charters, shall be separate and distinct and not subject to the authority of the executive branch of the city's government and shall be subject to the supervision of the council president. That does not mean that they don't follow procurement rules, personnel rules, and all those things. It's just that in terms of line of authority, it's the president of the body, the leadership of the body that controls the work that is done by the members of the staff. So that's a way of trying to articulate a scenario that's more constrained than the broader request that was brought in to you, and still maybe more to digest, more than you want to digest at this point, but I wanted to at least try to accommodate the concern of the council in that regard.
Thank you, Mr. McClement.
Doug has his hand up, and then I
Yeah,
think we
well,
should vote on
no.
this.
I agree.
Yes, I believe it's well put and it's short. Having served a long time, I agree with the concerns. They're always my concern. We did never have enough staff for the council, considering all we have to do. So I think long-term, that's something to attack. But as mentioned before, this is a heavier lift with too short of a timeline to really enact something that you make sure you're gonna do something with it once enacted. So why create a monster when you have the ability to, at any time, to create a charter revision commission and take some of these items up, take them up next year. All right.
Fair enough.
Done.
Okay, we're gonna vote on item A. John has made a motion to approve it. As is here, we'll do a roll call. John?
I vote in favor.
John is a yes. I am a no. Carl?
Does this include what Attorney Mendick just talked about? Just the
No,
one that
it's
we have,
presented in the.
just the one we already have here in front of us.
Correct.
My vote's no.
Jim?
I don't know.
Tanya?
No,
It's a no. Ed?
No.
Doug?
No,
And Joe? Joe, you're muted. Can't hear you.
Sorry about that. I said I know I have concerns about guardrails on it, so.
Okay.
anyway, go.
Okay, what I would like to do now is go slightly out of order. It is.
Before we do that, the other part of that was to move section 5-5D to 4-7D, which is the first part of that sentence, which is the moving the assistant clerk from the mayor's office to the council.
Okay.
The other part of that was moving section 5-5D, which is the assistant clerk, would be moved to section 4-7D, which is in the council section. So you move the assistant clerk from the mayor's chapter to the council's chapter.
Which would not impact any sort of council role here because the council already has the ability to hire these assistants.
No, just the location. of
It's
it.
location of it in the charter.
Location.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's all. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
do we have a motion to move the language in the charter to a section that makes more sense?
I make a
So
motion.
moved, yeah.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? What I would like to do is go slightly out of order. I want to respect the time. I know we have a number of the school people here. Mr. Schmidt is still with us. I would like to get into some of that stuff while they're here. There are other things that we can discuss and vote on without them, but just to have a little respect for their time, I think that would probably bring us up to 14, yes, this would be starting with 14 and did you guys, Josh, did you guys address these as one at the council with these individual? I know we looked at some of these combined last night. I'm assuming we need to take these each one by one.
I believe the way we voted on them was individually.
Okay.
If Nora's on, she can correct me if I'm wrong about that. But that's my recollection.
Okay. Do you have one? That was one for you. This is from Mr. Asmani, I believe. Linda, this is from you? Yes. All right, so we are going to consider item 14, which is chapter 10, section 10.5. The recommendation from the council was to please consider establishing two separate limits and total appropriations for the general government and Board of Education. Is there a motion to approve?
I move. I just want to say this is what the council asked for, and I defer to their judgment.
Okay. Any discussion? Any
Well-
would any of our invited guests or members of the commission?
I'm
like
sorry.
to-
What is it that we're voting on? I apologize. I was not paying attention.
This is the two separate caps.
Number 14
This is,
on
14, it would create two separate caps for the general government and one for the Board of Education.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we have any questions for
Like kind of.
our council members or for our staff from all public schools in the CFO?
This seems to be aligned with 15 and it's hard for me to see it as a standalone item, I guess.
Well, okay, so in item 14, you'd be creating two separate caps. In item 15,
I mean, that sets a stage for a whole bunch of different, actions to follow, correct?
They're all related.
Yeah, I think given the proportion of what Board of Ed expenses constitutes our city finances and what happened just a couple of months ago, I think personally think separating the two is very wise and very just.
I'm sorry, I want to clarify because I took a look at my notes and there was a question whether the council voted on 14, 15, and 16 as one or individually. In looking at my notes, it appears that they voted together. So 14, 15, and 16 were voted as a package by the council
Okay.
and it passed by a margin of, I think, 8-5 to 1. Those were my notes.
Yeah, I
So
think that was
I
mentioned
apologize
last night.
for my incorrect recollection, but I wanted to clarify that for the record.
these were approved together, 8-5-1.
Yes.
May I ask a question?
Yes,
And the city council may have voted that way. Obviously, we don't have to vote that way, but my concern is that the March 21st deadline, I'm trying to remember if that was the deadline that the Board of Ed was concerned about in terms of putting together their budgets. And I realize that these are temporary caps or temporary budgets or whatever, they're not final, but was that the proposal that the Board of Ed was voiced concern about at yesterday's meeting? I wasn't really clear on that.
Yeah, we'll hear from Mr. Schmidt and Mr. Asmani if you'd like to comment, and then I want to recognize Doug and then Dr. Estrella and then.
when the proposal came up, and a lot of these proposals related to the budget process, in trying to work with the Common Council and the members who were making the proposal, I put out a draft of a calendar that could work and how it differed, Ed, from what the current process is. And so I put out that calendar with the date of March 21st to reflect the time that I thought the city would need if there were to be some substantive changes that would need to be made from the original proposal, the revised proposal. So I just wanted to let everybody know before. I know Lunda wants to talk about this, and I wanted to let everybody know where that date came from, and that was a date that was part of an overall calendar to accommodate some of the changes that the council was looking for.
Can I speak?
Please.
Okay, so thank you. So with me, Lunda Asmani, Chief Financial Officer, Newark Public Schools. As you mentioned, our Superintendent of Schools is also here, and she would have some comments as well as Chair of the Board of Ed Finance Committee, Ms. Sherry McCready-Pritchett. We also have two principals, school principals that are involved in putting the budget together. Ms. Carla Montero from Fox Run, and then online, we have Dr. Damon Lewis, who represents Ponas Middle School, just to kind of give you perspective in terms of how it is. So what I handed you is a budget schedule to kind of just to compare and contrast what this means for the Board of Ed. So you'll see that on the far left column is a list of activities that we go through in putting this budget together. These list of activities are similar to what the city goes through the process. For those of you that have been on the BET, know there's a process and a timeline, and there are certain dates that we accomplish certain things by. And so we begin the process in October. And if you go all the way to the end in some of these selected activities, we typically approve the final reconciled budget. The Board of Ed does during the month of June. This is when they review the line items and how they reconcile with what the city has approved in terms of an appropriation. And just before doing that, there is a Board of Education meeting where they review the reconciled budget and approve that. That currently happens during the month of May. So on that same list, there is a what I refer to as a revised calendar, which is how we would have to modify our existing calendar to meet the specific requirement of presenting a reconciled budget in March before the council sets that final cap. So if you look on the second page, line 76 on the second page, which is the last but second action, whereas the Board of Ed now approves that reconciled budget in May, on May 19th, they would have to approve this in March, on or before March 21st, when the council meets to set that cap. And there are a number of activities that I've highlighted in gray. These are the activities that we have some concern with, and the principals will speak to, is the portion of the budget that the schools are involved in building these budgets together. Currently, we start this project.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Doug.
Are they sharing something on the screen there?
No, it's a paper handout.
Okay. All right, thanks.
I'll text you a picture of it. I'll send you a picture.
Yeah.
Okay.
No problem. I just, I saw something up on the screen. I wasn't sure.
I got it. I got it.
Would you also send me a picture or email it to me or whatever?
Does anybody from the Board of Education who's online have the ability to share it with the screen?
I can share it.
The superintendent has it. She can share
Thank
it.
you, Super.
Just give me 1 second.
Okay, thank you.
Is she allowed to share a screen?
Can I share a screen?
Can she share the screen?
She
Yes.
should be.
Yes, she
Yes.
can. Yes.
We're getting a yes.
We're getting a yes
So
from our
essentially,
technical
the
people.
part of the challenge that we're experiencing, and as the superintendent is pulling that up, is it does require the school-based budget piece of this process to begin earlier to meet the timeline. As I shared earlier, when we put the initial budget together, we present what we refer to as a pro forma budget for the schools, and that's what we send in January. we make a series of assumptions on what we think is going to happen at the schools. We don't truly know what that is. And as we go through the budget process in February, the mayor releases his recommended budget, and then the council sets a recommended cap, and then it goes to the BET. At that point, a couple of things happen. One, we now know what the actual target is that we need to meet. Two, we start getting some additional information that is really critical in building these budgets, specifically on the school side. We have information on student enrollment, we have information on course selections. And so now with that new number that we see from the city and a target, we spend the next 2 or so months working with the school principals to put these budgets together. And we do that during the months of March, April, and May. With a revision, we would have to begin that process in earnest around the November timeframe. And at this point, I'm gonna toss it over to the superintendent to talk about how that impacts us. But I also think it's important for you to kind of hear from the school principals that build these budgets on what that means to them with this revised timeline, and then we can have conversations on how we could make it work. So what we tried to do was to build a budget to see what we would need to do to accommodate this requirement, and this is how we've kind of laid it out.
Yes.
So,
Can I just
thank
ask the
you.
council,
Yes.
because one of the assumptions that's being made here is that the council is seeking what the deputy superintendent is calling a reconciled budget. Is that what you're seeking in the proposal? I don't know who could speak to that, whether the majority leader or Nora, somebody?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in because that is not what we are seeking.
Yeah.
We are not trying to create a budget that the school board is held to. We are not trying to create the school board's final budget in the same way that the budget that the city circulates at this time is not, it's the city's final budget. What we are trying to create is a version, a draft, shall we say, of a cap compliant budget in the same way that the city circulates right now in practice a cap compliant version of its budget. So before the BET sets the final cap for, or if the council is going to override related to the conversation we will be having later, the council and the BET should be able to look at what the Board of Ed's budget will approximately look like under that cap before it makes a final decision. I mean, as I said last night, as a matter of governance, I am deeply concerned by the fact that we set a final total top line number without ever having seen even a draft of what the Board of Ed budget would look like at that top line number. And that to me is very problematic, and it leads to what we saw this spring of massive confusion and concern and upset on the part of parents. It is not an unrealistic ask. I think it is done by school districts all over the country. It is done by peer school districts elsewhere in Connecticut. But right now we live in an information vacuum. We see, as Mr. Osmani said, we see a pro forma budget in January. And then there is no other line item budget circulated publicly, at least, until May or June. And that is an information void that leads to decisions being made without complete information. So that's the problem we're trying to solve. I don't think it is a demand for reconciliation any earlier than the city or the board currently reconciles, but it is a request for a draft that complies with the cap.
But Nora, it seems to me that you're asking for the Board of Ed to capitulate to a cap that they in their judgment, based on their education and training, would result in it's a cap that they that would result in so grossly diminished services that to present it would be a misrepresentation as well.
But I think that to a certain extent, that is the issue, right? The Department of Public Works may believe that a budget that complies with the mayor's cap is such a disservice to, the community and grossly represents what the Department of Public Works needs, but that is the budget that the Department of Public Works presents. And that allows the public to understand what the consequences are of the cap that the mayor and the BET and the council have set, right? Right now, we have no actual ability to understand the consequences of the cap on the Board of Ed until we see their reconciled budget again in May or June. And that is what caused all this parent outcry, right? So I think that is, it is, I mean, to a certain extent, you're right. I mean, but that is all city departments. Otherwise, then the Board of Ed have to do this. And I don't think it's unrealistic to ask that the Board of Ed also show what, they are projecting is going to be the consequences of the cap. And then everyone can make a more informed decision as to whether the cap is the right one or whether it needs to be raised or lowered. But right now, that cap is set in an absence of information that I personally have found very frustrating. And I know a lot of other people. Again, I can't stress enough, we are trying in this charter to respond to the criticisms that we have received about city operations. And I think 500 to 700 parents had a lot of issue this spring with this. So we're trying to address a major concern where we have heard from folks that there is a breakdown in available information. And I think that's the motivating factor here.
May I suggest
And I
that,
believe the superintendent,
sorry, I just want to just to follow up that there is a creative tension that occurs every year between the Board of Ed and the city when arriving at a number for the Board of Ed that works. And in many cases, the city of Norwalk assumes a lot of the expenses of the Board of Ed, either by picking up the debt service for some of its bonds, et cetera. But so there is a creative tension that happens, and I think year in, year out, there's everyone runs around like their hair is on fire. But at the end of the day, that creative tension works. My concern is that you're asking the Board of Ed to basically confine itself to what the city or what the Common Council sets as a cap prior to really this dance that occurs every year between the city, the Common Council, and the BET, that year in, year out arrives pretty much at the right sort of number for all concerned. There's also the issue of insurance premiums are not set until later in the process. There is also the issue of union contracts that may not be fully entered into. I mean, the Board of Ed, to compare the Board of Ed with the Department of Public Works, I mean, the Board of Ed is one half of the city budget. In fact, more than half, probably 60% of it. And we're also dealing with the most delicate members of our community. And so I think that to allow the Board of Ed the flexibility it needs to engage in this dance with the city year in, year out, I think is not a whole lot to ask. And I think to require them to capitulate to a number or percentage increase and see what that looks like,
And screen may have frozen. Dr. Spread?
Sorry, I lost connection for a second. Did somebody, I heard my name called.
Yes, Ed's screen froze. I believe you were in the middle of presenting something, so floor is yours.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. So I think that first I want to preface that this year's budget cycle is not the best example to utilize to speak about this process because there were many factors that were not typical to a budgetary conversation. And there were an array of opportunities throughout the cycle for families and the community at large to participate, including the council, that afforded the opportunity for people to have clarity around the priorities and areas of focus for the upcoming academic school year that will tie to the budget process. In terms of reductions, we have ongoing dialogue of these components throughout the process. And we've invited the council and other members of the community to participate. I know that when we're coming to the end of the budget cycle is when people feel most engaged. So sometimes articulating that there is a lack of information, a lack of clarity, sometimes misrepresents what really happens because of when people choose to be engaged, not when information is being provided. I think in terms of the context of the educational process and how we think through the budget process and its implication to the work, it's important to keep top of mind that shifting the budget cycle to 91 and sometimes more days backwards to making it closer to the start of the academic school year presents many challenges because our principals as well as support staff at the start of the school year are highly focused on moving instructional practice, setting systems and structures in schools, and starting the school-based budgeting process as early as November creates the challenge that we're pulling principals out of their normal routine of establishing systems and protocols in the school and making sure that teaching and learning is happening in the most effective manner to work on their school budgets for the upcoming cycle. Creating narratives about potential cuts and adjustments as early as November and December also present challenges around school morale and retention that are unintended consequences that can drastically impact the work that we do in service of children. And I think we always have to keep in mind that if we look at prior experiences, the budget cycle has an array of different steps in schools that look very different than what happens at the city level. We have 22 buildings and some schools have more personnel than some departments at the city level. And we have to look at every single school individually. We work with every single principal individually. And in having these conversations, we pull an array of different people within the system to support this process. Doing this so early is going to interrupt essential programs and services that we provide to make sure that kids and students, as well as staff, have what they need to have a successful year. We have with us Carla Montero, the principal of Fox Run, here with us today, and I would love for her to speak up, present.
I'm here. Thank you. I know Dr. Estrella is frozen. Thank you. So I'm here just to talk about the impact that I foresee it possibly having in our school-based budget process. You know, we're talking about the first third of our school year, where just to reiterate what Dr. Estrella was saying, you know, we're lifting these beginning of the year district initiatives. In addition to that, when we have had these conversations, which start at the beginning of February, we already have that critical data that we have been using to project and foresee what our needs would be for the upcoming school year. In November, it may undermine some of that strategic planning with resources that we typically talk about during that SBB process. And as Dr. Estrella and Mr. Asmani alluded to, we do meet with every department head during this process to make sure that we have those resources in place for the upcoming school year. The data we use, in addition to enrollment and projections of enrollment, to classify how many sections we would need, but it's assessment data as well. And mid-year, when we take a look at that assessment data, that's when we know if we're on track meeting our individual school goals, what resources we need to help us get on track. If we're not, just again, some of the strategic planning that goes into these decision-making meetings, and there's more than one. Having it early in November, I panicked that it could undermine some of that strategic student-based plan centered decisions that we all make.
Yeah, sorry, and I appreciate it. I want to just touch briefly on what I think we're trying to accomplish here and kind of respond to Dr. Estrella's point and Councilmember Jelski-Agner's point. You know, in looking at the grid now, right, the existing calendar for the January, and I'm identifying this specifically because I'm at these meetings, right? The SGC meetings in January and in March. I was at both of those meetings last year. There was no discussion at any of those meetings that music was going to be cut, right? And that's why people flipped out. And that's why we had these raucous town halls and whatever. So I do want to push back on that a little bit. I know that was one of the comments that came up during the budget process was, well, parents need to get involved earlier. In January and in March, we didn't know that. We didn't know that that stuff was going to be coming. We asked, there were questions at that meeting that I was at. The answer wasn't there. So I think, to the point that we're not looking for what the council's recommended is not a reconciled budget, but at least closer to the end than we're getting when we find out in May and June what the changes are. Because, the idea that it's all laid out in January and March for people to comment on is not accurate. So how do I think?
So what?
Yes,
Sorry.
so go ahead. Go ahead.
I said, so when schools go through the school-based budgeting process, they make informed choices around what areas they are seeking to reduce. And that's why once we go through that process, we identify the positions, and Mr. Asmani can speak more to this point, that are either being eliminated, adjusted, or added as individual schools make those decisions, and then we make a recollection of what the total number is across the organization. But it happens through that school-based budgeting cycle. And in some cases, we make overarching decisions for the district, but because we want to make sure the decisions that are being made are grounded on what the school need and make adjustments accordingly, most of these decisions are made during those school-based cycles. So at the time that you are articulating, when we had those conversations in February prior to the school-based budgeting conversations, we obviously didn't know the number of music or band and string instructors that were potentially being eliminated through the school-based budgeting process. That was identified once that cycle was completed.
Tyler, and if I may add,
yeah,
you were at that building, and to get to what would scenarios look like, we actually presented scenarios. For some of you that are on the council, you may remember getting emails from parents. We said, this is what it would mean if we weren't fully funded, and we gave scenarios. It wasn't band and strings and music, but we did say it could mean sharing assistant principals, right? So it could mean sharing assistant principals and few social workers and fewer nurses and fewer librarians. So as we went through this process without knowing the number, we actually did those scenarios, and we had a couple that we shared during the community meetings. And I think what we're saying is, and it wasn't, I know people said maybe it was just a scare tactic, but as you see where we ended, it wasn't that far from where we actually began. And what we're saying in this scenario is not that the Board of Ed does not want to provide these scenarios. We're just saying that to accomplish that in March is the challenge for us. And so we just wanted the commission and those involved to recognize that's part of the challenge. And I think you have Dr. Lewis is also here, one of our principals. He may also share some perspective as well, if you'll allow him to. But that's what we're essentially saying.
Sure. Dr. Lewis?
Good evening, everyone. How are you? Thanks for having me. I just wanted to say, in terms of trying to push this to early in November, that's maybe 60 days into school. I know there's a lot of days we have off in September and October, and informing people of that in November could be truly detrimental to the teaching and learning process. I'm thinking about this in addition to what Ms. Montero said about programming and enrollment and student assessment data. I think about it from a human standpoint as well. I think about teachers and professionals who are student facing and potentially maybe finding out in November or December, if the budget talks occur that early, that they could be potentially reduced. And I worry about what a teacher's affect and what their performance would be like if they knew this information in maybe November, December, instead of later in the year. I'm always thinking about, teacher performance and student performance and educational outcomes, regardless if they're, SBA data or NWA data or attendance data or suspension data. But I'm thinking about what that teacher's affect and what their disposition and skill set is going to look like in November if they find out or they ascertain that they are potentially going to be reduced based on a number that hasn't even been set yet due to projections. So that's my major concern.
Thank you.
Tyler, I just wanted to make a comment about the SGCs because you had said that you were at both of those meetings. At the building level, we collaborate with our individual SGCs after we do the preliminary SBB meetings for advocacy and feedback from our parent members that make up the majority. I'm sorry, the School Governance Council? No. Sorry, okay. So when we sit down with our site-based budget, which is the SBB, I'm sorry, and we meet with our council members, that's in addition to the district meetings. And if we're doing that early on, especially through the months, to Damon's point, November to January, that may reduce some of the, just because of the season in and of itself. You know, it's difficult to get sometimes monthly meetings in December with our parent board just because it's simply December. So that was another, you know, again, not our top or my top priority concern when I saw this draft, but definitely something to consider because we do rely on that advocacy and feedback from our parents in addition to the district meetings.
And I think to add to that is the cycle of elections for them as well, and their training to be acclimated and made part of the process starts as in September and October. And then we're asking them to engage in this process immediately after while they're still learning how to just engage in that role.
Nora?
Thank you. So, you know, I really appreciate getting the perspective, particularly from the principals, you know, certainly from you, Dr. Estrella. And I do understand and am sympathetic to the challenges here. And I think that they all certainly make sense in terms of how you reach a reconciled budget, right? How you make your final decisions as to what you're going to do and how to implement them. I really push back on the idea, though, that somehow makes it impossible for there to be a draft proposal again in sometime in the March timeframe, you know, that allows again the folks who are making the decision about the cap to do so in an informed way. And again, to some point that's I think Mr. Camacho made about, you know, the board capitulating, it also is an advocacy tool, right? If the mid-March budget is effectively outlines, you know, as I think Mr. Fairburn made the point, effectively outlines to the parents, you know, what the consequences of that cap are, it may actually increase the ability to have effective advocacy. But you know, at the moment, the decision is made largely in the dark, or to the extent that it is not made in the dark, it is made with, as Mr. Osmani said, projections, scenarios. Quite frankly, that is not the same as, does not have the credibility of a true budget draft, a true line by line analysis of how this would play out. And it does not allow, I think, anyone to feel that they have confidence in sort of what the consequences of that decision are. And again, I will, speak from my perspective as a parent, who found the entire process to be incredibly rushed at the end. Again, not only were there, and certainly from what happened, I think, as I understood it, the school-based budgeting did generate suggestions, but there was not the consequences of those suggestions in terms of then how they would be implemented in relation to seniority was not in fact clear until quite a bit later in the process. And so that created a whole nother layer of complexity and confusion. All of which is to say that from the parents' perspective, this information came far too late. And I want to also push back on something Mr. Camacho said. I cannot stress enough that the feedback that councils have gotten from constituents is that our system is not working. I cannot stress enough that the motivating perspective for the council members in making all of the suggestions we made, and I want to be very clear that these issues were in fact raised in many, in the fall last year when we hosted the seminars with everyone. We have been trying to raise these issues because our constituents are telling us that the system we have now does not work. So, and we are not gonna comfortable going back to folks and saying, here's the charter. It's basically the same as what you've got. Congratulations. We know you're really frustrated and you don't feel like our city government is working. So I really think we need to start from that place. What happened last year? And it's not just last year. This is an issue. The 4 years I've been on the council, we have had this issue every single time. People do not feel like they get enough information early enough. Whether you feel as if you've presented it and they're not hearing it, the way that it should properly be presented is the same way that it is presented by the other city departments in a budget process that is, sort of aligned with what everyone else is doing. And that is a way for parents and for everyone else in the city to feel as if there is a clear and consistent process and message. And certainly, there can be accommodations made. No one is asking again for something to be final. The city does not put forward a final budget at this point in time, but having a better sense, a better benchmark, an ability to grapple more realistically with what the cap means, I do think will help parents and others feel as if their concerns have been heard and that we are making our best efforts to make changes that address what the feedback is. And I think that is the core part in many ways of this charter revision process. And so I think what would be very helpful to hear from, you, Dr. Estrella, from the principals, how can we, is there some middle ground? Is there some compromise? But something has to change. And I think the council is going to be unwilling to accept a recommendation from the Charter Revision Commission that does not have something change about how this budget process is working. I mean, just to be very blunt, that was, the majority voted on every single one of these provisions because we don't feel like the budget process is working. And so that's sort of the point at which we're coming from. And I think that's a starting point that we really need to address some of these issues around.
I think to push back a little bit, I think people have to understand that unlike other departments in the city, we're dealing with human beings. We're dealing with people. We're dealing with human capital. And it's really, really tough to make projections based on human beings when things change in midstream. Trust me, from the building level. When 50 kids come into your building in December, January, February, and you haven't accounted for them, it's tough to really go back and recalibrate the budget. So that's why I'm not in favor of this draft going out in November, December, because I'm in the building and I see the intricacies that happen in the building on a day-to-day level. And it's really, really, it's difficult. Not difficult. I don't even want to use the word challenge. I don't like to use the word challenges. It's an opportunity for all of us to grow, to understand that, we're dealing with human capital. And we have demographers, we have people that make projections, and those projections change from second to second, minute to minute. So for a school district and a board to come up with a draft of a budget that people will, let's be honest, will take that draft and run with it and say, this is it. And then rumors will start to swirl that this program is being cut and this program is being cut in November, December. And then that's going to impact our building for the people who are student facing, our most precious resource. That's my pushback.
But I just want to be clear though on that. We are not asking for a budget in November or December. You all already put a budget in January, and we're asking for an update on that budget in March. And we're asking for that update to reflect the cap that has been voted on by the council. So it is in fact, you all
Chair,
are already putting in a budget.
Can I just say, this is
think
not
that's important.
panel discussion. This is a commission meeting, and all conversations should come through you, Mr. Chair, so that we can get through this meeting in an orderly way.
Yeah, I'd like to hear from Dr. Estrella, and then Doug and Ed were next, and then we need to figure out how we're gonna vote on this. And Josh, and
Thank you so much. I just want to make sure that I articulate the fact that we cannot utilize some of the elements of this budget cycle, particularly because there were a lot of pieces that were not typical to prior years that impacted this budget process. I know that there were some challenges around how people felt information was being communicated, but it does not mean that the cycle in which we are gathering information, exhibiting the budget process, and putting the proposals forward don't well align to the work that we need to do. I think that there has to be more engagement. We do engage in a number of communications to make sure that all of the constituents in the community are informed of the process. Sometimes we've gotten pushback from community leaders about the fact that we were asking parents and other community members to come and participate and become engaged in the budget process. But again, I want to rearticulate that shifting the cycle. I'm not saying that there is no other way of doing this. I'm pretty sure there's other ways that we can look at this work and refine the budget cycle and calendar. But what's being proposed right now would not work effectively for us to do the work that we need to do. And if it would be okay, we have the chair of the Finance Committee here, Sherry McCready Pritchett, that wanted to share a few words, and I don't know if she can be given the opportunity to do so.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Estrella. To be clear, Norwalk Public Schools leadership supports transparency and collaboration with the city. There is absolutely no objection to establishing 2 separate budget caps or submitting a line item budget to the city. However, submitting a reconciled line budget that aligns to the cap in what would require a significant shift to the internal budgeting timeline is problematic. For example,
I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt. I believe we established that we are not, the council and the commission are not asking for a reconciled budget. That is not what's being asked.
okay, can I finish?
Please. Just want to clarify that.
The school-based budget process would be moved from March, April to November, January, and you've heard from speakers before me why that would be a challenge. The second thing is that these changes present logistical and operational challenges because November and January is a time when, number one, school leaders are deeply engaged in instructional leadership and academic progress monitoring. And the principal and budget teams would face additional burdens during a peak instructional period. But more importantly, the risk of accelerated budget timelines are going to be noted here. The reconciliation timing uncertainty is problematic because we know reconciliation is required typically in May instead of March, which would impact planning accuracy. And typically the board does approve a budget in May. But there are many elements that we don't know yet, which would be a challenge for us to do this in March. And one of those is scheduling and class selections, enrollment projections, class sizes and sections per grade, stipend positions, which would be applicable to something like the music program, pre-K classroom seat allocations, school readiness council seats for pre-K, contractual decisions, utility rates, and custodial staffing changes, to name a few. Again, to be clear, while the district is willing to adapt to any timeline changes, they must be thoughtful because we want to make sure that we're preserving the quality and accuracy of school budgets. We need to make sure that we maintain the integrity of the school-based planning process and ensure that student-focused efforts remain prioritized. Thank you for your time.
No, I appreciate it. And I want to understand, is this, are the dates moving up based on the assumption that the council is asking for a reconciled budget in March?
whether the council is asking for a reconciled or a plan to show how they would reconcile, the work involved is essentially the same. Because what I understood was, for example, if the council is setting a cap of 4%, they would like to see from the board, how are you going to get to the 4%, right? Whether that's the final number, whether it's a tentative number, whether it's a plan number, but they want to know, how are you going to get to the 4%? And what we're saying is the work that it gets to show, whatever you call that term, final, tentative, preliminary, would require us to change how we put these budgets together. Because what we don't want to do, we don't want to just come to you with a number and just say, oh, here's 4%. We want that number to be thoughtful. We want that number to include the plan of study. We want that number to account for the number of students in the school, because it's one thing to just bring you a number because we could. We could bring you a number that ties to that 4% and then turn around and say, well, you know, that number is not going to work. We do something different. What we're trying to get to is a meaningful conversation where the city does indeed get a number that is reasonable. And what we're saying is, it's a challenge to get to that by that date. And I think yesterday there was a conversation, well, what is a date that you could do this? And I had indicated a date, and Jared, my friend, has talked, and he's not a fan of this because I understand from his perspective, but if we were to bring a plan 45 days from the date that you have now, I know that means a lot, 45 days, 30 days later than that, we could try and meet with you somewhere. But to do this by March 21st will be a challenge for us to bring in numbers that are meaningful.
Please.
So the alternative, because all this talk about this process moving back into the fall, I don't think, from what I read and heard the council discussion, that was ever anticipated or contemplated. But if the council recommends, if we have a cap and the council were to recommend a $4 million increase in the cap, how is the Board of Estimate supposed to make a decision about whether that cap increase is valid if you're not providing them with any additional information? How do you get from the point where the council gives the increase in the cap, and the Board of Estimate then has to make a determination of whether that's a valid increase? The council was listening to people who came before them, decided to give the $4 million more. It may not be as much as the Board of Ed was looking for, but it's more. How is the Board of Estimates supposed to make a determination that that is a valid number and that's a number that makes sense for the Board of Education if you don't provide them at least with a modification of the budget you provide the mayor?
Sure. So I'll use an example of this year that we just concluded. So when we present the budget to the city, to the council, and to the Board of Ed, we do in fact present a line item budget. Each year, we do that, and it's published on the website, and we distribute books to everybody, line item budget. This budget cycle, we actually created scenarios, and we said, if we were not to be fully funded, here's what this would mean. And we mentioned we would have to cut this many social workers. We would have to do this many principals. We would have to do this many. So we actually had scenarios and charts and graphs by school. We had a workshop with the, I believe it was a Jefferson Elementary School. The chair of the BET was there. The chair of the council was there. The city CFO was there. And we went late into the night that day and walked through the entire budget, what were the drivers were and what the consequences were. So I think to say that the decision to allocate a 4% or a 3% is made in a vacuum without knowing what the consequences are is a bit misleading, because throughout this time, when we make every single presentation, a part of our presentation is what if we are not funded and what could possibly happen. And we shared those, and the council got emails, please, if you do this, we're gonna lose social workers. Now, we didn't lose social workers, but we lost music teachers. But that's essentially what we did each year when we present our budget.
But the question I asked was, if they want to increase, how do you show what you will do at that point? You told me all the scenarios about what you don't want to do and what it's going to, how it's going to impact you. But if they were to raise it by $4 million, just a number I'm pulling out of thin air, what is the issue? What's the impediment to providing that information to the Board of Estimates so they know how you will do it and whether or not they want to go along with the council? Because remember, it's a difference of opinion. The council's increasing it. Board of Estimate has to make a decision.
when we meet with the council each year, we actually talk about here are the drivers and here's how we would do, and we prioritize that. So we say, for example, this year we said we are engaging in a school lunch program. This is what we would do if we were to receive additional funding. This is what that would do. So that information is shared. And I guess what we're trying to understand is what new information do we need to provide to meet this requirement? Because the consequences of not being funded are consequences that we share throughout the period, and the parents are aware, and they write emails, and we have these town halls. Maybe I'm misunderstanding your question, Steve.
And Stephen, and then to your point, if the council said they were giving us an additional $4 million, then we would present the items that would have had been cut or were in line to be reduced. Because we didn't have the $4 million prior, we would talk about, these are the things that would be reinstated if we got the additional funding of programs that we had that would have been lost otherwise, if I understood your question correctly.
Yeah, the superintendent's getting to the answer that I was looking for. The question is whether there, and I haven't talked to the council and don't know what their thoughts are on this, whether there's something lesser that we could be looking for to certify that, for example, if the $4 million was they want to hire new science teachers, I don't know that that's a need, whatever it is, I'm just using that as an example. And that's what they said. That's what the public came out for when they came to the council, even though the council has limited authority, but the council then raised the cap by $4 million. It's for science teachers. What impediment would there be to the Board of Education indicating, and you've provided all that other information, so everybody knows what the potential consequences are of other things, but if they are being responsive to the public, you're in the dark now, sir. Yeah, they're trying to be responsive to the public. Is there a way that you could certify? And we recognize, I know how the statute works, and I know that the Board of Education ultimately will pass the budget and line items that they want to pass anyhow. But is there a way to certify that we would use this money in a way that the parents have requested it?
I think that historically, when we've entered agreements or conversations with the city, with the mayor, and additional resources have come in because certain programs were being reinstated because the city as well as the board saw it as a need, we commit to that agreement. I mean, as professionals, we're people of our word. If we make a commitment to doing something, that's what we do, and we've done it in the past. We've done it around social emotional services. We did it this year in the reinstatement of band and string instructors. So whenever additional resources are coming in, we have done that. In terms of the line item component, even when we're looking at when we're presenting the budget, we talk about the percent increase that we would need and what are the drivers associated with that. The details in terms of how we get to some of those components happen in the school-based budgeting process because we want to give schools autonomy in making decisions within their building. And that's the level of detail that happens later in the cycle. Mostly starts in like late February, March, that creates a challenge to having a reconciled budget as early as March 21st. But we do provide.
I just want to chime in and say that Doug and I have had our hands up for a while, and now
Yes,
Nora does.
and I want to get to Nora as well. So we're gonna Nora, Doug, Ed.
I believe Mr. Hempstead and Mr. Camacho were before me.
Okay, so Doug, Ed, Nora. Doug?
Couple things, and I'm going to try and keep it short as possible. Just a little history for those who don't know. Up until 1995, when there was a Charter Revision Commission and a ballot question, the council absolutely had no vote or anything to do with the operating budget. Came out of the mayor's office, went to BET, and that was done. There's your history lesson. In its infinite wisdom, which I disagreed with at the time, they decided to put a cap on the budget. I was more in favor of, and I'm kind of maybe suggesting the council sometime think about this, instead of having it come later in the process and the council actually votes on the budget. versus voting a cap early on, because from historical perspective, I had the same frustrations all of you have with when we got the budgets. There used to be no communication with the Board of Education. Prior to when I was council president, I actually required it of them, and they came in and made a presentation, but I was always frustrated with the information received. But the theory behind the cap was not about individual budgets per se. It was about what the taxpayers could afford and what kind of increase that the city could put upon the taxpayers. We usually got information that's concerned if the budget went up 1%, it would equal this in a tax rate, or 2%. The Board of the Finance Department always presented that before we did. I don't know if it still does or not, when we worked at the budgets. I'm just trying to give you a history. Having said all that, Mr. Chair, looking at items 10, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, they're all integrated, they're all related, they're all due, especially after hearing all the discussions tonight. The more discussions need to take place, that I don't feel as a member of this commission, especially with a short time, maybe if this had come to us in January, February, we would have had the amount of time to have a good in-depth discussion and a good in-depth thrashing of the facts, and to see what happens when you integrate one idea with another idea, and obviously the impact on the Board of Ed. Those discussions need to have, let alone the BET wasn't brought into any of this. So, Mr. Chair, it may be my interest at this point, but I'll wait, is to move to table these items for now, because we got one more meeting after this. That's it. And I don't know how we can take up an intelligent discussion and an in-depth analysis. There you go.
Yeah, well, okay, no, noted. Thank you, Ed, and then Norm.
I tend to agree with Doug, and I would support that motion were it to be made. I just want to address a few points. At the end of the day, the Board of Estimate, and I think to a large extent the City Council, but certainly the Board of Estimate really has no interest in micromanaging the Board of Ed. So if the public were to come out and say that they want, more science teachers, I think that's a pedagogical issue that we have an elected Board of Ed to consider, and a superintendent of schools, and the staff of the superintendent of schools, the educators, the people that know best how best to allocate the monies that they receive. I think that's I think to ask the Board of Ed if to commit to more science teachers, because that's what the perception is, where the need is. I think that's asking professionals to really disregard their professional training and an opinion. And so I think that's sort of that argument, I think, does not really carry much weight. At the end of the day, the Board of Estimate is interested more in what the city can afford. And if at the end of the day it's 4% or 4.2% or 4.3%, it's really up to the Board of Education and the Norwalk Public Schools to figure out how best to use the monies that are going to be allocated. I think the notion that we can micromanage or sort of have anything on a sort of intricate level to do with how that money is used on a line item basis, I think is really, it's not our role, I think, ultimately. I'm interested to know, and at the end of the day, if the parents feel that that the charter revision shortening the deadline, making it more difficult for the Board of Ed to come up with its budgets, or coming up with budgets that might be entirely misleading, I think the parents are going to get together and vote down this charter. So, and they're a pretty, powerful force out there. I'd like to know what the vote on the Common Council was. I know there was a split vote on 14, 15, and 16. I know there was a majority vote that wanted those provisions, but I'm interested to know what the actual vote was.
8-5-1.
8-5-1.
Okay, all right. So it wasn't
15, 16 were addressed together.
All right, so it wasn't, by a 2/3 majority or anything like that. I think that I've been involved with the budget process now for over 10 years. And in the 10 years, this tension between the Board of Ed and the city has occurred. Some years are worse than others, but no year has been great. And I think that's just part of making a sausage. And sometimes it's not pretty. But to suggest that anyone other than the Board of Ed should figure out how to use the monies that are being allocated, or that we have any substantial say in that. I don't think that's our role. I think that's why we have a superintendent of schools and a Board of Education. But because this is such a heavy lift, I agree with Doug that this matter should be tabled.
Okay, I want to recognize Nora, and then we need to move on with this items. Nora?
Sure. So a couple things. Again, I do want to be clear that the council did ask for these conversations about the budget to be considered by this commission when we, presented our requests to you in the fall. So I want to just be clear that it is in part the level of council suggestion is in part by the fact that we had hoped to have proposals coming from you that would address some of these things. And so the council, in choosing to make these further recommendations is in part expressing that we had hoped to have more recommendations that did address some of these issues in the first place. And so it is not for a lack of having expressed concerns about this. And second, I think that, and I actually really appreciate, Mr. Hempstead, your history lesson there. And maybe, again, this is getting to the root, I agree. I would like to see us simply have line item authority in the among the council for all the reasons I've already addressed. But as long as we have this sort of cap in place, there is a fiction that, the idea that the cap is somehow set on the basis of what the taxpayers can bear. How are we ever assessing that, right? Can the taxpayers bear an additional $1 million one way or the other? That works out to be, I can't remember now, it's $2, $5 per resident. That is, there is no world in which we're truly making an assessment, and I don't even know what the metric would be. So there is an arbitrariness that already exists to the cap. And the reality is that on the city side, whatever the city increase is going to be is driven pretty much entirely by the line items that the city has come to, right? So it is, it is not unreasonable to say that and truly, I think it would benefit the Board of Ed to, in a similar sense, be presenting to everyone what this cap, is based upon, or what the consequences of this cap would be. Because the reality is that otherwise, the cap is literally an arbitrary number roughly picked out of thin air. And yes, it is certainly, based on feedback from the superintendent, based on the mayor's thoughts. But the reality is that there's no magic to that number, that it's 4 or 4.1 or 3.9 or whatever is based on no particular, has no particular basis unless there is some line item budget behind it. And I think that is what, we are asking for, is to have some sort of line item budget that explains that. And I agree, it is the Board of Ed's authority and position to articulate what that is. But, to otherwise expect that there is some kind of increase or decrease. I mean, in the years the council voted an increase, again, we literally picked a number out of the hat. We were like, well, $1 million, that seems like a good round number. How that is a good or appropriate budgeting process, I think that really is the goal here, is to try to get some greater level of rigor and some greater sense in which the cap can be pointed to some kind of sense of what is going to happen if that cap is put in place.
Mr. Goldstein.
Thank you. And speaking as our majority leader for a second, I think I want to step back a little bit and I want to just make sure that everyone, because there's a lot of really important people in the room who have, and I think there have been a lot of good points, back and forth, but I do want to take into account that everyone recognizes that there are a lot of people in this city who are not happy. Just very simply, who are clearly dissatisfied with elements of the budget process. And it's not something where, there's a particular culprit. I believe that everyone is acting in good faith. I think that the Board of Education wants to do the best it can for students. I think that, principals and city staff from the superintendent on down do want to do the best on behalf of all of our kids. I want to make that very clear because as Ed Camacho said, there is a creative tension between the two, both the city and the Board of Education. Part of that is by design. Part of that is by, I'm saying by design. It's also it's by incentives. Departments want to advocate as much as they can for their department and to help, their students. The thing that I am having trouble with throughout this debate, and I think that was the locus of the reason why these items were passed by a majority of the council members, is that there is this sense of frustration. And council members, while we have limited authority in the operating budget process, right? We set the cap. It happens relatively early in the budget process. And what Councilmember Najewski-Eichner said is correct. We don't have a whole lot to go on at the beginning, and that makes it a tough decision because at the end of the day, the council's primary role is setting the mill rate. That's where the buck stops. That's the really important thing. And it affects what everyone's taxes are. And especially in times where cost of living is going up, we are trying our very hardest to run an excellent city at as low a cost as possible. And I believe everyone's in agreement on that. That is what we are trying to do. It's what Mayor Rilling has advocated strongly for his 12 or 13 years in office. The thing that has frustrated me throughout this discussion is that there seems to not be a whole lot of give. And I appreciate Lunda's suggestion about, the suggestion about moving it out 45 days, but as I understand it, that brings you to about mid-May, which as I understand it is pretty much where you are currently. So there isn't really a whole lot of give. And look, I am empathetic and sympathetic to a lot of the points raised by Principal Lewis and Principal Matera Walsh, but I also know, as the recipient of hundreds of emails from parents every year on the subject, and I know you are too, that there is a deep frustration. And if it's not going to be met, as Ed said, it could really create a tough tension if we're not at least cognizant of what people want and what people are asking for, which is frankly a little more understanding. Not a lot more understanding, like a little more understanding. So if this, I just bring this up to say, whether these items are tabled, whether these items are voted no, whether these items are voted yes, there is a message that has come across from a lot of people in our community that we all should hear. And I'm going to speak on behalf of the council because I imagine the members are going to agree with me on this one, is we are willing to work with you to make that process better. We are, because we all want the same thing. Like it sounds trite, it sounds cliche, but I promise you it isn't. And, I want us all to think about sort of what our end game is here, because this doesn't give me the sense that we are all working together to address a concern that was raised by hundreds of parents at the concert hall, online, that we saw those meetings. And that is not something that we ever want to happen again. So
May I suggest, Josh, that year in, year out, the council has gotten it right. Year in, year out, the council has set a cap. The Board of Estimate has considered the budget requests, including the request from the Board of Ed. And I don't believe that there has been ever a year that I've been on the BET where we have requested that the city council reconsider the cap and increase it. I don't think that's ever happened. So I suggest that year in, year out, despite how ugly the process might be, the city council has gotten it right.
That's not real, I mean, thank you, but the concern, as I understand it, is that parents would like to have an understanding of the school budget process a little earlier than that May, June timeframe. So I don't really think it's about when the council votes on the cap. I think it's more about when, you know, parents have an indication of what their budgets are going to look like, which is something, as I understand it, that city departments already do. And there are other school districts across the state that are able to meet this. So that's my issue. And look, the commission's gonna have to make a decision one way or another. I'm not gonna tell you what to do. I'm just saying that there's a clear concern that's been aired, and I think that we should work collaboratively to address
Jalen and then Tanya, and then I want to address the motion.
My opinion, I understand the things you guys are in, guys have a lot of stuff to consider. But I think there is a consensus even from the Board of Ed.
Tyler, we can barely hear Jalen online.
Turn the mic on.
I did it, I'm sorry.
Better time.
You hear me now? So I think, not to throw the baby out with the bathwater, I think there is consensus on item 14 and 15, even with the Board of Ed members. And I think at least that's something that we can deliver to the people. It might not be everything, but if we do feel like we need more time to iron out 16, which is the cap provisions by March 21st, I think that'd just be a consideration, because I think that's something at least we could deliver to the people instead of just tabling everything for another 5 years.
Yeah. So no, I appreciate that. Tanya, I don't mean to cut you off. I'm gonna go to you next. It's almost 9:30. We're not halfway through the list. So what I was gonna recommend, and then we're not doing this whole thing tonight, it's not gonna happen, is that 14 and 15, John has made a motion on 14. 14 and 15 passed the council 851. We've heard from a number of our representatives in the schools that they're okay with 14 and 15, correct? So 14 is 2 caps, 15 is the line item budget. I think we've heard from school staff that they're okay with both of those things. Am I misrepresenting that? The date comes in 16, which is where we seem to be caught up with.
If the date comes in 16, then 14 and 15.
14 and 15 are fine, right? So I think what we do is we vote on 14 and 15.
Can we state what they actually are before voting?
Yeah. Do you have the thing from yesterday, the sheet? Joe?
I have no sheet. I'm at home, sorry.
Okay, so 14, I was gonna go over this quickly. 14 is chapter 10, section 10.5. Please consider establishing 2 separate limits on total appropriations for the general government and the Board of Education. The cap provision, right? So it creates 2 caps. 15 is chapter 7, section 10A through B. Please consider requiring the mayor and the Board of Ed to submit line item budgets in compliant with the cap provision being defined in 14. So those are the 2 things we would be voting on. I would recommend that we amend John's motion to combine those. The board, the schools have indicated they're okay with it. The council was okay with it. I think we can get those 2 things out of the way, and then we're gonna have to consider how we go about doing the other things. I want to call on Tanya, I want to recognize Tanya, and then I would like to address those 2 things, and then we're going to at a minimum take a break for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Tyler. Just for 16, I wanted to know if both parties would be interested in moving that date from March to mid-April. Program of studies is usually out by January. Course elections are usually done by the end of February, early March the latest. So that kind of gives everyone a census of how many classes need to be running, how many kids have signed up for certain classes. And I feel like that kind of, at least we can meet a little, we can meet halfway. We're about a month apart. So if that's something to consider, not to discuss tonight, but just something to consider on both parties. And then we can vote on 14 and 15.
Appreciate it, Tanya. Thank you. Okay, I am going to make a motion to amend John's motion to approve 14 to include 15 as well. That's all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? No. So,
Can I ask
Questions
a-
in
wait a
the
minute,
language,
wait a
though, when
Yes.
I'm drafting this, it's to be drafted, is would it be filed in accordance with the budget calendar? We're not setting a date, but it would be in accordance with, but somewhere in the budget process, these things will have to be submitted. So do I simply state the budget calendar?
for now, right,
All right.
unless there's a vote at our next meeting to
All right.
change it, so that'll be that for now.
All right.
Okay, all in favor of approving?
wait, I'm sorry, Tyler.
Sorry, I didn't see your hand. Yep.
Yeah, you need to make sure this is integrated in other parts, because it's, the cap shows underneath 10-5, that's not listed. We got to make sure what we're passing is integrated with all aspects. Again, we're passing something without looking where it needs to be integrated. Because the, 10-5 sides, you pass a cap. It doesn't say, you get one budget. That's what it says. Total budget of the city of Noah. So there's got to be changes here to make sure that this is incorporated correctly.
Right, I mean, I think what you would do would be like what we did with item 2, use of terms, right? Where, I mean, the language that Steve puts together will indicate that,
Yeah.
it
that's why it's
applies
clear
anywhere
for-
you're discussing the budget cap. Because it's
Right.
now
I'm
two
just,
caps,
making it clear for the motion. I'm okay with it.
No,
I'm just-
understood.
I just want to make sure that there's more than these two numbers listed here, that's got to be integrated. That's all I'm trying to
Understood.
say.
Yeah, so all in favor of approving 14 and 15? Any opposed? Any abstentions? 14 and 15 both passing. I'm gonna recommend we take a 5-minute break,
Okay.
get a drink, go to the bathroom, and then we can come back and I don't know if this is gonna go much longer, but I'm gonna adjourn quite yet.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, James, we just take a 5-minute break. We're already.
But we're also. Sure.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, we can resume at 9:33. My suggestion, I'd like to do, to close out this evening is gonna be, we vote on item 9, Article 7, Section 7(1)H. This is language requiring disclosure of applicant names, backgrounds, and credentials for board and commission appointments prior to appointment. We heard from members of the council last night. I think this one's pretty self-explanatory. This was passed by consent when it was at the council. And we can do this one tonight, and then we will adjourn and resume and do what we can with the remaining items at our August 5th meeting. We'll also need to come up with a date, and it might have to be a Zoom only for perhaps one more meeting. I think we're gonna have to.
Because you're gonna have to see what I drafted.
Right, we're gonna have to see what Steve comes up with after the 5th, review it, and have that final meeting. So, Steve.
Can I just say, on this item that's
Yes.
coming up, I want to talk.
So item 9.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And this is Johan Lopez was, Councilman Lopez was the main sponsor of this. I've had numerous discussions, and I will try to come up, if you approve the concept, I will come up with some language. Basically, what this is going to do is basically establish, it's like more like I took it from a couple of other charters I work on, a public applicant pool, basically. People will file their applications with the mayor's office and for boards and commissions. And on a quarterly basis, the mayor's office will issue a list of who the applicants are, what they applied for, et cetera. It just basically establishes a publication standard. These things are published on the town website, they're distributed to the council, so that you'll see language that makes those issues, raises those issues. I'm going to add to it as an element, in one of my charters, we have a public outreach requirement. I'll put the language in. If you don't like the language, you could take the language out. But the concept, I think, was to try to get a sense of what the universe of applicants look like. They come out on a quarterly basis. I will add some language that if the mayor makes an appointment and appoints people that were not on those lists, he has to disclose any other names that came in the interim period of time. But that's how the section's going to work. That's a disclosure requirement.
Members of the council, any comment?
No, this item was supported unanimously by the council and with an understanding that there were going to be some dates that need to be worked out, but the principle is something that the council was on consensus on here. So we support it.
So I'll move that we have our attorney write language that we can then approve at our next meeting. That's in line with what everyone with the council's organization to us.
So we will, the motion is to wait on this
So
until.
the motion is to approve him
Approve
to
the
work
concept
on-
subject
to
to
do the work
The
on this
concept
concept,
subject to language.
and so that we can approve it at our next
Agreed.
meeting.
Okay, all in favor?
All right.
Aye, any opposed to that? None, okay, any abstentions? Doug, do you have a comment or a vote, or your hand is up? Your Zoom hand is up, and you're muted.
And you're muted.
Doug, you're muted.
Yeah, I got it. No, it was discussed, I think yesterday that there was a certain amount of days that needs to be included with this. As I was, the appointments need to go to the council. It was 10
There will
days.
be language. I think that one of the discussions we had, and I'll draft language to that effect, there's two things. One, we quarterly reporting, quarterly disclosure. And I think that we were gonna leave the rest of it up to the council, and perhaps it could be in this, that the council can establish a timetable, a timeframe, so that I'm trying to remember where this, I was dealing with another. town.
Well, I think they said.
We
2
discussed the
weeks
issue
prior.
that if it came up, you would not take a nominee at the first meeting or go to a second meeting or.
That
Yeah.
was, Mr. McQuaid suggested that the council,
Yeah,
that wasn't necessarily a part of this,
right.
this,
then
Particular-
the only thing that is the 45
that was a
day.
wonderful
Right.
suggestion I thought Mr. McQuaid had for them to get the names and to be able to vote on the next meeting and vote on it.
Okay, that was his, yeah,
That
okay.
was his-
that was
I
right,
got
yeah.
it. I'm trying to make sure there's a couple intertwining things here. Again, you have certain appointments. These are appointments that are caused the council to approve, correct? These are
Correct, yes.
appointments and not straight out mayor appointments. These are
Right.
strictly guidelines. Two, that consideration be given to the dates or timelines on this, because you have certain appointments since they moved the year to January 1st. Police commissioners, fire commissioners, that those should be, worked in a timeline that works. Because if you're saying, you're gonna wait for your first meeting in January and you can't vote the second meeting, you're voting for people a month later.
Well, and I think the point was made by council that, they would get a list of names on a Friday. Then you have to
Yeah,
vote
the
on it on
council agendas
Tuesday.
come out on a Friday and we'll vote on it on a Tuesday. This part of this was to give a little more time to vet, consult, and also to get an understanding confidentially of the applicant pool who, and get an idea of the kinds of candidates the mayor is submitting. And those who are being, not the mayor is submitting,
So how
that are
far-
being submitted.
I don't mean to cut you off, but how far in advance would you want it that would make it easier?
I'm sorry.
How far in advance would you want the
I think we
information?
talked about 14 days yesterday, and I think that's entirely reasonable. I know Commissioner McQuaid had a suggestion that was, I don't know what your thoughts on it were, but I know he made a suggestion of basically a application being submitted at one council meeting and voted 2 weeks later at
voted
another
2 weeks
council meeting. That was never something that the council discussed, but it's
14 days.
similar in theme to the kind of thing that I think.
I just asked council to put 14 days.
May I just add, is it possible to put language in there wherever possible or practicable? Because there might be instances where you might need to vote on someone before
Right.
there's been a whole lot of transparency or a whole lot of publication. So wherever practicable or possible that we have these timeframes, but there might be instances that won't be possible. If language like that can be added to the.
Yeah, one of the things I actually thought about was on the issue of when the council addresses this would be in the discretion of the council, and that they could establish council rules. I thought that's what Rick was talking about, So the council can always waive their rules. It becomes a matter where the council gets to make that determination.
It's more elegant.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Effective solution.
I think that's fair, again, and I'm just saying this because I'm here on behalf of the, majority of council here. That's not something that was actively discussed by the council, but I think that's something that I imagine the members would be, supportive of.
And Ted's point, that's wherever practical, the council could always
Yeah,
waive their
I mean,
rules.
again, like, I think that if there are special circumstances that warrant, something, I would imagine the council always appreciates flexibility in situations like this, especially when it comes to appointments, if there are special circumstances, that the mayor brings to the council and the council sees it sufficient to do so, then that's fine.
And I know there was some discussion as to whether or not to have the applicant's name when they apply or when they're being considered. So I think if we're talking about transparency in government, if somebody puts in an application for a position, unless they ask for it not to be published at that time, should be.
Yeah, I think that was in the language that we got from the council,
Yeah.
which is that it would be at the time that the applicant was nominated.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying.
I think it's application.
Such data would subsequently be made public when the applicant is nominated by the mayor.
Yeah, I mean, the idea is
The
that the
language we
council.
got, I didn't change that.
I think the idea that the way as Johan proposed it was that the council shall have, basically be able to get a confidential list, as in it is not a public document of the people who applied to various positions, so that there is some level of oversight. Say if the mayor, and I'm making this up, decides to choose people of a certain educational background or a certain gender background or whatever, or for any other reason. And that way the council has some understanding of who's applied and who's been selected. But that list is not supposed to be publicly disclosed because of course we're not airing out applications of all the people who didn't get selected. So that's part one. Part two is the number of days when the mayor nominates someone that the council has to review that person's application or tends to nominate someone. So I understood it as in two parts.
So there's no public disclosure. So there's no no
Public
disclosure.
disclosure of the person who's been nominated. That's not disputed.
No.
No, I get that, but
That's not what you included in the memo that you sent to us. Would require disclosure of applicant names. It doesn't say would require disclosure exclusively to the council.
It says applicants would have the ability to request non-disclosure of data.
That's a
Semicolon.
option, yes.
It would be made public when the applicant is nominated by the mayor.
The excluded information would be made public when nominated for mayor.
So that's
But-
true. That language does seem to say that the information will be public unless requested by the applicant.
correct.
Right.
But I think once the
Once they're
nomination is
it's a
put
public-
forth, it is not.
Then once they're nominated,
Once they're nominated as public, is how I read this and how I think it would make sense.
And I don't know how you can establish a confidentiality standard. I'm not sure there's something in the
You can't really
FOIA.
confidence once you're
FOIA.
nominated, it's your.
No, once you're nominated, but I'm talking about during the process. The idea is to be able to look at these names confidentially.
Well, I think the council should have that, right? I mean.
I'm not sure FOIA would permit it.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, that's the issue. So, all right, well, I'll draft it.
Okay,
I know what to-
thank you.
But we're approving the concept subject to
Concept,
language,
yeah.
right?
Exactly right. That's been approved.
All in favor of Jim's motion?
Wait, what's the motion again? I'm confused now.
Jim has made a motion to approve item 9. Conceptually,
As written.
as subject to Steve's language that he puts together for us to review at our meeting on the 12th.
Okay, all right.
The 5th, rather, excuse me, the 5th. Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that is it's unanimously approved by the. That is the last item we're gonna tackle tonight. We will. I'll speak with Irene, we'll put together our agenda for August 5th, but it's largely gonna pick up where this one left off. To figure out how to tackle the remaining items, which at this point are 10, 11, 12, 13, and then 16 through 21. What we have. It's about half of them. These are the touchier ones. So do we have or Steve, do we need to discuss a possible?
Yeah, I think
final meeting date?
Just suggest, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm speaking out of turn, but you might as well vote on 11, 12, and 13 right now. That's the historical provision stuff, which we had no objection to whatsoever.
subject to my.
Yeah, subject to language.
Yeah, I don't think
Which
that-
one's 10, 11, 12?
11, 12, 13.
There's nothing to do there other than. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point. I will make a motion that we vote to approve 11, 12, and 13. The historical provision sections that were unanimous consent items for the council. So that's just something we can check off the list for next.
Subject to the changes.
Subject to
Yeah.
Steve's review as was the case with item 9.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, all in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that's 11, 12, 13.
So if I may, to talk a little bit about housekeeping. One, I will be recommending that we have another short meeting after the 5th. Because once the language comes out on the 5th, I want to make sure
Yeah.
it has time to settle. It has time for the council members to look at it. And then time for you to look at it, because I'm going to be preparing all this language in the next couple of days. I'm hoping to have this in your hands before the weekend or during the weekend, so that by Tuesday, you'll have a chance to look at the language that I've drafted. I will be talking to Tyler, members of the council, as I draft the language, to make sure that I'm drafting it in a way that will ensure that when this gets adopted, it will get adopted. When this gets proposed, it will get adopted, because they can't change it when it's there. So that's point number one. So and then point number two is we have to do a meeting. My hope, as I promised the chair, is that it would be half hour or less, but to have all the documents, everything approved for you. And then we need a date from the council as to when they're going to deal with this sometime in August. And so we'll have to balance the schedule with that. So maybe at the next meeting, bring our calendars and take a look at.
I would request that meeting not be a Zoom,
Not be as,
not be a Zoom.
okay.
I would request that meeting.
Well, I'll check with Irene, I'll have to figure out childcare. No, I'm around, it's just
It's chapter.
I'll figure that out. And I'll speak with Irene to see if we can get a room.
Yeah, but this is,
Okay.
it's a wrap.
The motion
I got
adjourned.
The movie's wrapping.
I got you.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you.